Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Neglected Naruto has dynasty inheritance. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by OOKAMI88 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Now, let the show begin. In ancient times, the world was plagued by a terrifying creature, a monster that could reshape the land under him and destroy anything that stood in its path. It could split the land, carry the mountains, and swallow the sea. This beast was called Jubi, 10-tailed beast. Many people perished during the demon's reign, as nothing could stop this horrible creature. Until he appeared. A man confronted the massive beast and defeated it with what was later known as Fuinjutsu, sealing arts. He separated the beast's soul from its body, sealing the former into himself and the latter into the moon. This man was later known as Rakuto Sennin, sage of the six paths, father of ninjutsu. He introduced chakra, a mixture of spiritual and physical energies, to the world. Many welcomed his teachings, and even after the sage's death, they created their own techniques, clans, and even whole villages of ninja, thus giving birth to the world known today. For a while, though, it was a free-for-all between the various ninja clans. They fought against each other to gain more land for themselves. It wasn't until the two greatest rivals among all these ninja, Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara, decided to form a truce between their respective clans that the first ninja village was created. They called it Konohagakure no Sado, village hidden in leaves, and founded it in the land of fire, with backing from the fire daimyo. Soon, others followed their example. Each of the 5 great nations had their own hidden village, where shinobi of various skills and abilities lived, trained, and accepted missions. However, this new peace didn't last long. The bitterness of the previous conflicts was still fresh in too many hearts. Wars were fought between the hidden villages. The third great ninja war was the deadliest of them all so far because it was then that a new weapon was used. The Bijuu, tailed beasts. Powerful beings created by the sage himself. Upon his last days of life, he used his magnificent powers to divide the Juubi's soul and chakra to 9 lesser creatures. Because of that fact, some of the ninja villages sought those beasts out and sealed them in various containers to be used as tools of war. People chosen to become weapons for their countries were known as Jinchuriki, and their might more than once changed the balance of the war. Jinchuriki were not always created for battle. Sometimes they were the only hope of surviving a rampaging Bijuu, like what happened in Konoha. Namikaze Minato was the Yondaime Hokage, 4th fire shadow, of his village. During his reign, his home was attacked by the most powerful of the 9 beasts, Kyuubi no Yoko, 9-tailed demon fox. He had no choice but to sacrifice his life to seal the beast away into his newborn son. The Hokage's dying wish was for the child to seen as a hero for guarding the village from the wrath of Kyuubi. Unfortunately, things do not always go as we want them to. The boy, Uzumaki Naruto, wasn't given the treatment you would expect a hero to receive. He was shunned by the adults because of what was imprisoned inside of him. While the reinstated Sandaime Hokage, 3rd fire shadow, Sarutobi Hiruzen, forbade anyone to speak about the beast under harsh penalty, it didn't stop the villagers from shoving their hatred towards the Jinchuriki onto the younger generation. Because of this, for most of his young life, Naruto was surrounded by cold glares and endless loneliness. It wasn't until he started his ninja training that he finally gained what he longed for so long, friends. However, that happiness didn't last long. One of his teammates, his best friend, Uchiha Sasuke, willingly left the village in order to gain the power he deemed necessary to kill his traitorous brother, under the guidance of one of the most notorious criminals of Konoha, Orochimaru. Naruto was sent with a group of his other friends to retrieve him. The Uzumaki boy managed to catch Sasuke before he crossed the border. The fierce fight erupted in the Valley of the End, a place where the Shodai Hokage, Senju Hashirama, fought Uchiha Madara and defeated him. History likes to repeat itself, one could say. Naruto knocked his friend out during the fight. He was forced to use Kyuubi's power to match the might of the cursed seal that Sasuke received from Orochimaru almost 2 months earlier. Not only that, but he also managed to burn the mark off Sasuke's shoulder with a good dose of demonic chakra. While it left a scar there, in Naruto's mind, it was better to be scarred but free, rather than marked and enslaved by an enemy of the village. While the Uchiha was beaten into submission, the injuries that he bestowed on the blonde Jinchuriki were much worse. Naruto fought with intent of disabling his opponent, while Sasuke, driven by anger, hate, and the corrosive influence of the cursed seal, plunged an assassination technique he learned from their sensei, Hada Kakashi, the Chidori, 1,000 screeching birds, twice through Naruto's body. Despite the great regenerative powers of the beast locked inside him and the natural stubbornness to stay alive, the whiskered boy didn't leave this fight without those attacks affecting him. On the way back towards the village, he saw Kakashi coming their direction and he let himself fall into the bliss of unconsciousness, fatigued by both injuries and chakra depletion. Several days later, in the village of Konoha, Uzumaki Naruto is stood trial. The council, along with the village elders, managed to convince the Goddamn Hokage that the force used by the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi in retrieving Uchiha Sasuke was too much and the genin overstepped his authority. They even got a scroll from the Fire Daimyo, supporting their claims. Despite Naruto's defense at the court, he was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to a life banishment from Konoha and Fire Country under the punishment of death if he dared to ever return. There was more bad news for the blonde boy. With some unorthodox machinations, the civilian council finally abolished the Sandaime Hokage's law about Naruto's status as a Jinchuriki, and now everyone was open with their hatred for the boy. Even some of his friends of the Rookie 9 and Team Guy abandoned him. Ino, Sakura and Tenten all thought that he was dangerous to be around and that at any moment he would snap and start killing everyone around him. Sakura also didn't want to forgive him for the state he brought Sasuke back. Kiba looked at Naruto like the blonde was some sort of freak. Niji, Shino and Shikamaru were more neutral in their opinions, however they would act as ordered by the village. Thankfully, Choji and Lee were more friendly in their opinions, but just the two of them couldn't rival the hatred of almost all the inhabitants of Konoha. The only one who truly supported Naruto in his time of need was Hyuga Hinata, probably the shyest girl the blonde had ever met, but also one of the kindest souls there are. Naruto found an unexpected ally at the beginning of his banishment in the form of Kyuubi no Yoko, the very demon that was the main reason of his misfortune. Having no one else to turn to, the boy chose to trust his tenant and together they took one path that no one walked down for many centuries. Thus began their journey to the west. In the time of the Rakuto Sennin, the western part of the continent was very violent. The land was very deeply infected by the evil of the defeated Juubi, and the sage couldn't find any way to help. To save at least the eastern side, the man used a very powerful earth jutsu to create a massive mountain chain that separated the two sides. The most outstanding were the 5 highest mountains, placed right beside each other, that appeared to reach the sky itself. People named them the Goshugakujin, the 5 guardian giants. Not many dared to cross the paths between there, and those who did were never seen again. That was where Naruto disappeared for the next 7 years, so the story says. A man that looked no older than 20 said to his companion, while the both of them rested under the shade of a large oak. He had short violet hair styled similarly to the green beast duo of Konoha, seemingly always closed eyes that made him look like a fox, and Shinto priest robes that consisted of dark gray hakama pants, a pair of wooden jeta on his feet, and a dark red haori over a white kimono. He also had a staff with a gold ring on the tip of it, settled on the grass right beside his hand. However, it doesn't end there. Then what happened next, Shingoku-sama? You always stop at the most interesting parts, the creature complained to his master and friend. It was a very large cat, but not a tiger or lion. It actually looked like a house cat, but was big enough for a grown man to ride. It had white fur with one dark spot in the middle of its forehead and very big green eyes. Patience, Tinko. I'm about to get to it. The man named Shingoku smiled. When Naruto crossed the path between two of the massive mountains, a poor family of farmers that lived right under one of the peaks took him in so he could rest. They shared what little they had with him and Naruto was very touched by their kindness. When he asked how things were in the west, the answer wasn't what he'd expected. Ruined villages, people slaughtering each other, demons hunting every human in sight, lords of small lands warring with their neighbors. And this had been going on for hundreds of years. Was it really that bad? Tinko asked. Even worse, Shingoku answered. When Naruto heard this, something changed inside him. He looked at the kind but poor family, who showed him more compassion than he ever knew in his old home, and wondered how many people like them are out there. How many are getting harassed or killed just because they were caught in the middle of a conflict that they never wanted. That was when the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi found himself a new goal in life. To put an end to the chaos that plagued the West and its people. Tenko looked at his master, a little confused. How did he want to do that? He was only a genin. A very good question. Firstly, he had to find someone who would train him, because despite his often childish acts, Naruto was aware that he lacked the strength and power to achieve his new goal. Kyuubi provided him some information about one person that could help his host. A man who was said to be at least equal in power and wisdom to any of the 5 Kage from the east. Shingoku's face twisted into a more sinister look, which made his partner uneasy. They went to no other than Master Guandu. What? That ancient master of martial arts and mystical powers. Hasn't he been dead for, like, 400 years now? That's true, but like you mentioned, Guandu was a master of many crafts. When Naruto got to his resting place, he was met with a lifelike jade statue of the master. There was more to it than an expensive stone and beautiful craft. This statue held the very essence of Guandu, his Kai, and that energy flew straight into Naruto, more accurately right where the seal Yondaime Hokage placed was. Shingoku looked towards the sky to see a pair of birds flying happily together. Apparently, upon the end of his life, Guandu had a vision where a person worthy of his knowledge and power appears at his doorstep long after his demise and made preparations for their arrival. After the transfer ended, another unexpected thing happened. What? Asked the intrigued cat spirit. Tenko was getting drawn into the tale more and more. Kyuubi no Yoko got free. The seal broke from the force of Guan's Kai entering Naruto's body through it. Thankfully, Naruto didn't die from it. In fact, he gained incredible skills and abilities, though he still needed training. The priest smiled again. Also, there was a little surprise for him because Kyuubi gained a human form out of this whole incident. That's amazing, Shingoku-sama. How long did Naruto have to train to master all those new powers? It took both him and Kyuubi a full year in seclusion. Thanks to the merging with Guandu's Kai, the demon gained the knowledge of the old master, while Naruto was blessed with all the power. I think that there is an old saying about a situation like that. There will be always a master and a student. That's no saying, you thought that up. Tenko shouted in an accusatory tone. Alright, maybe I did make that up, however it doesn't make it any less true. Kyuubi was already powerful beyond anyone's imagination, but he never had any deeper knowledge about the world around him. So, after being separated from Naruto, he took the mantle of master and advisor, while Naruto started his quest of making the West peaceful again. Shingoku again stopped his tale just to take a bite of juicy pomegranate. Tenko didn't say anything this time, knowing that his friend wanted to sate his thirst, but his tail moved back and forth in anticipation. After eating half of the fruit, Shingoku continued his tale. Naruto finished his training in a year and was by then quite a powerful person. Together with Kyuubi, they left the secluded temple of Guandu and descended to one of the nearby valleys. There, the two natives of the east met a disturbing sight. A small village was being attacked by one of the many bandit groups that lurked in that region. Not thinking too much about it, the two of them fought and defeated over 30 of the bloodthirsty men. Fearing that there were more of them and that those who survived would no doubt tell who sent them packing, the ninja and his demonic companion tracked the bandits to their lair inside an abandoned fort. The chief of this group, who was called Kororyu no Kiba, Fang of the Black Dragon, didn't want his men to be seen as weaklings, so he called all those who were currently gathered and ordered them to burn that village down, and for those who showed any resistance to be killed without mercy, be it man, woman or child. That's awful. Tenko grimaced with disgust. Indeed, the priest agreed. Naruto and Kyuubi knew that too. Even though those bandits had a great numerical advantage, they couldn't just let them roam free and kill innocent people. Thankfully, they weren't alone in this fight. Someone helped them. Who? Apparently, there were more villages harassed by this group, and from each one, several heroes came to get rid of them, or to collect the treasure they'd stolen, Shingoku said while scratching his companion behind ear, which was rewarded with a content purr. Among them, a few particular people stood out, like the Monkey King, Sun Wukong, who liked adventures more than governing his kingdom, but hated when either man or demon was oppressed by evil. There was also Temukai, a swordsman who's rumored to be blessed by the souls of thousands of warriors from the past, and his love and mistress of secret arts, Ogawa Himiko. And you can't forget about Sokishu, Lord of Siki region, one of the very few peaceful places on this side of continent. The Lord of Siki was there too? Tenko asked, surprised. I thought he was too old to leave his palace. Several villages and smaller cities in his province were attacked by those bandits, and his love and kindness for his people is widely known. There is no doubt that Kishu had enough of hearing of his subjects being mercilessly harassed and murdered. Shingoku explained. He took about half of Siki's army and marched to where spies found the hideout. When Kishu got there, the battle was almost over. However, he did witness the might and honor of the warriors. After the fight was over and the remaining bandits were captured and imprisoned, he invited all the heroes to his tent for a meal. Once they all got to know each other's names and titles, Naruto started to talk about his new ambition of making the West a truly peaceful place. He explained to them how his life as a Jinchuriki was back in Konoha, the reasons behind his banishment, and finally he told them about the kind family of farmers who were the first to tell him how hard life here was. He told them that it was unforgivable to let people like them suffer because someone more powerful and less moral than them did whatever they wanted. Firstly, Lord Kishu was intrigued by this young eastern boy, asking him a very important question. How was he going to give the western lands a lasting peace? Naruto looked at the older man with a very serious gaze and a flame of determination in his eyes, saying only 5 words that forever changed his life and lives of those around him. Tenko watched his master in anticipation. He didn't dare to speak at this moment. Looking towards the horizon, where an orange sun was setting, Shingoku continued, Naruto's answer was. I will create an empire. And here is where the true tale begins. Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto loved sunsets. There's more to it than the fact he could rest after a stressful day, or because the sky was bathed in his favorite color. He had a habit of watching the blazing orb of light hide behind the horizon at the end of the day, giving up its place in the sky for the moon and stars to take over for the night. Naruto's mind wandered back to his early childhood, when back in Konoha he would sometimes climb on the Hokage monument and sit down on Yondame's head to admire the beautiful sight of sunset. At that time, the blonde wasn't sure why, but he was the more comfortable there than on the stone heads of the other Hokage. He always felt some sort of bond with Sandame's successor, one that he couldn't explain. Now however, Naruto knew for certain why he felt that way as a child. He found out not long after arriving to the west during the murderous training at Gwandu's shrine. Naruto finally knew who his parents were. Namikaze Minato, the Konoha no Kairoi Senko, Yellow Flash of Konoha, and Yondaime Hokage, was his father, and Uzumaki Kushina, the red hot-blooded habanero, was his mother. After absorbing the essence of Gwandu's power, the seal that previously held Kyuubi was changed into something new. One night, Naruto had a dream where both his parents appeared. They have told him everything. About Kushina being the second Jinchuriki of Kyuubi, the role of the Uzumaki clan in Konoha's history, and also about the incident on the night of his birth. When it was Naruto's turn to tell his parents about his life, they were shocked and angered at what they heard. It still saddened the blonde to remember the farewell he had with the spirits of his parents. They couldn't prolong their stay because there wasn't enough of their chakra left to sustain their existence in the living world. With tears and words of goodbye, Naruto wept as Minato and Kushina held him in one last embrace before vanishing. The young blonde remembered the loving gaze between his parents when they looked at one another and the love he felt from them when they held him in their arms. That was one of the happiest moments in Naruto's whole life. There was another habit that he developed not long after leaving Konoha. When it was time to leave, Naruto found a letter under the door to his small apartment. He still has it, even years after his banishment, and reads it every moment he feels uncertain. The paper was a little worn because of the past time and from being handled so often. Naruto still had a very hard time to believe what was written there, and especially by whom. Looking down at the single sheet of paper, he started to read it again. Dear Naruto-kun, this may sound very weird, considering that it's me who's writing this letter to you, however I can't stay silent anymore. I have to tell you how I really feel. For years now, I watched you from afar, admiring you more and more whenever you found the strength to get up from your failures. You are everything that I am not. Strong, confident, cheerful, determined, those are few of the many qualities that I can see in you. When I'm close to giving up, I always think, no. Naruto-kun never gives up, then I also shouldn't. And this became my nindo, never giving up and never going back on my word. I always struggled with getting my feelings clear enough for you to notice. Whenever we were close to each other, words wouldn't come out of my mouth, my face grew hot, and sometimes I would faint around you. I know that you never would ignore me on purpose, but it still hurt when I couldn't get your attention. But I never gave up on you. Despite people around telling me to stay away from you, I longed to be with you, to walk beside you, and to be loved by you. I'm finally writing this letter for you to understand my feelings. I love you, Naruto-kun. I don't expect you to feel the same about me immediately, or at all for that matter. I'll be grateful for your friendship, and I'll pray for you to find happiness with whoever you find to love, even if my greatest wish is to be the one you choose. With love, Hyuga Hinata. How long exactly had Hinata felt this way? How long had he overlooked so many signs of her affection? How many opportunities for a true relationship did he waste while going after a girl who didn't want anything to do with him? Those questions plagued Naruto's mind whenever he read this letter. I knew you'd be here, a male's voice called, and the blonde turned around. There stood a man that looked no older than 30, quite tall and well built. He wore a black kimono with a crimson haori over it and black hakama pants, though his feet were bare. The most defining characteristics were the man's hair, which was dark orange and reached his belt, and his eyes, which were red with vertical pupils. You always come here at this time of day. He looked at the letter in Naruto's hands and chuckled. And you also have that letter with you. I'm surprised you still read it so often. By now you should remember it by heart. I do not, the younger man tried to deny, but finally groaned in defeat and nodded to his companion, while gaining a small smile on his lips. All right, I do remember it word for word. But whenever I read it, I can hear her voice saying those words. I can see her face going all red as if she knew that I had read her letter. Naruto then sighed heavily, turning towards the setting sun. What can I do, Kurama? She's so far away, does she still have the same feelings for me like the day she wrote this? Or, even if this sounds ridiculous, does she hate me like all of them? The man known as Kurama looked at his friend. Naruto truly changed through the 2 years of war. He went from a scrawny little hothead to a young adult who just reached his 19th birthday. Dressed in rich orange and gold robes, designed with mythical patterns of trees and clouds and a mighty phoenix on his back, Naruto looked like real royalty. The only insignia of power he wore was a simple crown made from a single rod, with 2 ends curved upwards and joined in the middle of his forehead. When asked why he used such a simple design, the young man always said that he didn't need anything fancy and that something simple was enough for him. The unused gold was given to those who needed it more. It's almost funny how things change with time and how people mature through it. The unification of the western lands wasn't an easy quest to complete. Even with the help of Kishu's army from Siki, more than once Naruto was faced with obstacles that almost broke his spirits. Demons, warlords, sorcerers, assassins, all of them wanted to kill the young blonde for daring to oppose their regime. However, with a year of hard training under his belt, a good dose of stubbornness, and much luck, Naruto faced some of the worst bastards that lived in these lands. Thankfully, because of the charisma that was natural to the former Jinchuriki, they also gained allies. Their crusade brought hope to those that were oppressed, and many joined the already growing army. Even something as simple as helping two old rivals find a common ground helped their case. During the final year of war, Naruto challenged the mightiest demon lord of the West, the Dragon Emperor Naga. Because the demonic army was so superior in both strength and numbers and wielded the dark arts, Naruto called for a one-on-one duel, citing an old war tradition, where from both armies the strongest warrior will come and face an opponent from the opposition. He also added that both him and Naga will fight because there was no one stronger than them in their respective armies. The winner takes all. The fight was long and brutal, and several times Naruto almost lost. Thankfully he outsmarted his larger opponent before delivering a finishing blow. With that victory, the young shinobi gained more allies and supporters, which in turn helped to end the whole war faster. When it came time to choose the new emperor, Naruto hadn't expected to be nominated by the nobles that gathered during that meeting. Their reasoning was that it was Naruto that made this era of peace a reality, so he should rule the lands he brought together. 2 years has passed since then, 7 since Naruto's banishment from Konoha. Kurama put a comforting hand on the blonde's shoulder. I think that until you confront her about this, you'll be forever condemned to what-ifs and maybes. And pray tell, how am I ever going to talk to her if I'm here and she's back in Konoha, huh? Naruto asked, a little annoyed by his former prisoner's smart remarks. You can always send a few agents to escort her from the village, the carrot head suggested. You mean kidnap her? I can't do that. Naruto shouted, outraged at the idea. Alright, I was only joking around, the demon said quickly. But on a more serious note, I've got a report from one of our groups in the east, the Ladies of Shade. There is something big going on the other side of the mountains. Kurama then produced a scroll from the sleeve of his Haori and gave it to the young emperor. Naruto focused his attention to the piece of parchment. The Ladies of Shade were a troupe of wandering dancers, all beautiful women who performed magnificent spectacles. They were also a group of special agents that served under the emperor and the lord of the court as spies. Their training was very specific, and many veteran kunoichi from hidden villages could learn a thing or two from them. If the troop found out about something, they would report it directly to Kurama, and depending on the seriousness of the report, he would then inform Naruto. Kumo is on edge because they lost one of their Bijuu, the Nibi, due to this criminal organization Akatsuki. The Land of Water and Kiri have finally finished their reparation program and have trained quite a number of new ninja. Suna and I was still the same as in the last report. We got something seemed amiss to Naruto, and he turned to the man beside him for answers. Where's the part about Konoha? I clearly remember making an order to check on how things are going back there. He swallowed slowly, still having hard time not calling Konoha home. It's in a separate scroll. I think we should go somewhere private before you read this and then explode. That bad, huh? Naruto asked in a weak attempt to make a joke. You'll see, Kurama said. Not saying anything else, they both walked towards Naruto's private chambers, one of the most protected places in the whole kingdom. The whole chamber was divided to 4 smaller rooms. A bedroom, a study, a bathroom, and a small meditation chamber, where the blonde would sometimes go to calmly think about anything that requires focus. The bedroom wasn't anything fancy, just a room with a big bed with red satin sheets as well as a dresser, a closet, and a few decorations, while in the bathroom, there was a bathtub big enough to hold 4 adults. The meditation chamber was the humblest of all rooms, as it didn't have anything other than a single mat on the floor and wasn't bigger than an average cabin. The study on the other hand, where the 2 men have directed their steps, was a little more rich when it came to decorations. There were trophies made from weapons that Naruto had gathered during his campaign in the west. A carpet made of a giant black bear that he had killed in that one town in the north covered almost whole floor. There was also a desk, made of mahogany and sitting under a window, littered with several documents and other papers that the young emperor deemed important enough to deal with personally. Naruto went through the report that described the situation of his former village. So much has happened during his banishment, Suna reduced their alliance to Konoha to a mere non-aggression pact. Many countries that Naruto personally helped during several of his higher-ranked missions practically cut all ties with Konoha and Fire Country, which in turn made the daimyo cut funds towards the village. More changes, however, went on in the village itself, such as the power shift within the Hyuga clan. From what he understood, both Hinata and Hanabi lost their right to be clan head after the sudden death of their father, Hyuga Hiashi, 6 months earlier. The elders appointed someone called Hyuga Hideyoshi as the new leader of the clan. Somehow this piece of news worried him. Through the line of succession, either of the 2 sisters should take over after Hiyashi's unexpected demise. Hinata, being the first child, should be the one who takes over, but now neither she nor her sister has any chance in ruling, not when the elders are holding so much power within the Hyuga. There was something fishy going inside that clan and Naruto didn't like it one bit. More disturbing news became known to the young emperor as he read next pages of the report. Civilians were rioting against the Hokage because of the lack of funds and trade. The council started to usurp even more power than ever before, and now Tsunade was almost just a figurehead. The worst, however, was only beginning. Konoha was on edge of ruin. Shinobi were being stripped of their status and privileges for civilians' gain, making a rift between the ninja clans and the rest of populace, and in retaliation, even simple D-rank missions had prices higher than someone could ever afford. It was a state of chaos, and the end was easy to predict. Not a pretty picture, is it? Kurama asked casually, not taking his sight from the blonde. This is worse than I could ever expect Konoha to fall. How did all this happen? Naruto asked, still in disbelief at what he read. It's like for the last few years everything just went straight to hell. That is quite a good summary. Are you? Kurama didn't get to finish his question when suddenly a knocking sounded from the front door of the royal chambers. Yes. Who is it? My lord, I have an urgent message from one of our posts at the Five Peaks. Come in, Naruto ordered. Into his chambers came a man dressed in a black uniform with white armor over it, on his feet were classic tabi shoes, his arm and shins were protected by guards. The young ruler couldn't see the man's face because of the white mask that hid both the lower part of his face and his hair. On the right side of his chest there was a symbol of the clan he belonged to, a 6-point star drawn inside a ring, with only the top and the bottom points touching said ring. What is the message? The ninja looked at his leader and master, though normally it was against custom for a member of the Shiroma, White Demon, clan, to not bow his head when talking to a superior. However, being one of the older members, he knew the blonde boy from the time when they both fought together in the Unification War. That was also when the former Jinchuriki and the humanized Biju found the clan of Western Ninja defending their lands from the greed of their neighbors, who wanted to eliminate the shinobi, destroy their temple, and take everything valuable for themselves. Many had died, but despite that and the growing number of enemies, the will of the Shiroma to protect their home and traditions was unbreakable. Each clan member that died took at least 20 soldiers with them, however that wasn't enough. Then a beacon of hope appeared in the form of an army of the Siki region, led by 2 Easterners. With quick cooperation, clever tactics and confusion among the enemy's troops, the clan was saved from their ultimate demise. Out of gratitude, the leader of the Shiroma bowed his head before the 2 outsiders and swore their loyalty to them and any descendants the 2 may have in the future. Snapping out of his thought, the ninja repeated what he himself heard. A group of 8 foreigners and 1 large dog from the east crossed the borders of this kingdom. They were led by an older man with unusually long white hair, looking like the description of one called Jiraiya of the Sannin from the Fire Country. They were all going through passages used by merchants and their caravans, probably using one as a cover, but our sentinels could sense potent quantities of chakra in all of them, no matter how good they thought it was masked. My brothers are keeping an eye on them, trying to guess their intentions, but they will not move against those foreigners unless either they break our law or you command us to move. The ninja produced a sealed scroll from a hidden pocket under his armor and gave it to his emperor. Here is the full description of all of them. Naruto took the scroll, instantly ripping it open and reading the content. Word by word his face became darker and more emotionless. Kurama was a little worried there, the mere mention of the blonde's old mentor or other people from Konoha, except for a few exceptions, would sometimes make the Uzumaki survivor quite angry. The royal guards that had to spar with their lord during one of his fits of rage could attest to it, and their bruises and broken bones could prove what words could not express. Naruto? The Biju asked, uncertain of his friend's reaction. The Shiroma ninja stayed silent, as it was not his place to question his lord at such moment. Snapping back to reality, Naruto closed the scroll and turned to the still kneeling warrior. Where were they when you left to report this? The calmness of his normally very loud voice almost scared his current companions. They crossed Nanasho Valley, going along the merchant track, heading straight here, to the capital. What is their estimated time of arrival? At the normal pace of an average caravan, assuming they don't want to be recognized as shinobi by traveling faster, I dare say no more than 4 days until they'll be at the gates. Naruto closed his eyes for a minute, various thoughts crossing his mind. I want 10 of your best trackers to keep observing this group, but don't let them know you're there. Unless they break any of our laws or attack our citizens, you are not to interfere with them. For the next 4 days I expect reports of their progress each evening. Now go. Hi. The ninja vanished from the site, fully intending on completing his new mission. Kurama, let the guards know that until this group comes close to the palace, they are not to interfere with them. Once they're round the inside ring's entrance, the Kauka Steel Division are to encounter and, if need rises, restrain them. Afterwards I want all of them brought before me. As you wish. Kurama left his former Jinchuriki alone to make sure those orders are carried on. He couldn't help but wonder what in the 9 circles of hell were Konoha ninja doing in this kingdom. He couldn't help but look at the young ruler in slight concern. I hope you know what you're doing, kid. Either this will be a sweet dream or a sour nightmare for you. Finally alone, Naruto again looked at the newest scroll, reading all descriptions slowly before intently focusing on one in particular. Why are you here, Hinata-chan? Boy. Hiratori. Get your lazy butt over here and help me with these ropes. I won't do any more work for you. Shut up already. You were the one that tied the wagons. It's not my fault you're so incompetent, Kiji. Why you? Both of you be quiet already and get to work. If I hear another argument or even a grumble, gods help me, I'll spank you both so hard that you can forget about sitting anywhere for a month. The two brothers immediately stopped their quarrel because despite both of them being almost 18 and having a knack for getting on each other's nerves, there was one thing that they never did and that was getting on their mother's bad side. Because, as she told and demonstrated many times in the past, you are never too young or too old for a good spanking. Especially when your mother is the famous female merchant, Kamoshida Kasumi. Kasumi became a widow after her husband was killed in a bar fight a few months after their twin sons were born. Their marriage wasn't ideal, but she loved her drunkard of a husband and his sudden demise shook her greatly. However, having 2 more mouths to feed, she couldn't dwell in the past. The duty of raising Hiratori and Kiji was hers now and she was too stubborn to ask anyone for help. Being the only daughter of a talented blacksmith, Kasumi had more than enough strength to work in a forge. She could shoe a horse with her eyes closed, make various tools and kitchenware, and even repair armor and remake broken weapons. Sometimes, if she got enough materials, Kasumi made a piece of jewelry. Nothing fancy enough for nobles' tastes, mind you, but still a luxury that richer commoners could afford. That was what their family business focused on. She would make various items, and her husband would take a wagon and travel through the land, trying to sell them. In the meantime, Kasumi took care of their house and made a living out of repairing broken farming tools and sharpening knives for the local housewives. Now that she was alone, Kasumi had to take over her husband's job. When the twins were younger, it was difficult with money sometimes, but still manageable. But as soon as they were 10, the young widow saw that with only her local job, it won't be enough to support herself and her kids. So, she spent a few months in the forge, making tools, knives, and even weapons, then took her sons, and together they left their home behind to sell their goods. While on the road, Kasumi was teaching her sons about life and made them help her so they all could survive. That's how the last several years passed for them, going from one place to another, living mostly on the road. During that time, the lonely mother managed to teach both her boys a good piece of what she knew about both merchandising and blacksmithing and everything they had to know about the world. They were ready to leave and start living on their own. And while the thought of letting her sons make their way out into the world on their own broke Kasumi's heart, she knew that it was inevitable. Thankfully, she was able to save up some good money for both of them to make the beginning of their adulthoods easier for them. Living on the road wasn't easy most of the time, and sometimes it was downright dangerous, especially with the war going on. Luckily, nothing major happened to her family and their wagon, and after the unification of the empire, they could travel even beyond the mountains. That created new opportunities for business. That's where the 3 of them spent almost a year. Their tools and weapons sold well, especially when they hit a few of those ninja villages. In one of them, Kusa, if she remembered correctly, Kasumi found some good ores and metals that could be used to improve her works, which she would be able to sell in the West. Kasumi wanted to make a few arrangements around her family home, and it didn't hurt to have a small fortune for when she won't be able to even lift the hammer because of old age. They're lively. They're most likely glad to be back home. A gentle voice distracted Kasumi from her thoughts. She turned and saw a dark-haired young woman walking out of one of the 3 wagons owned by the merchant family. Be as it may, their bickering gets on my nerves, Hitomi-san. I just want to get home and relax after such long journey. On the way back from the east, around one of the 5 strongholds built around the peaks, Kasumi's family met this strange group of travelers. 8 people and the biggest dog she had ever seen. The canine was big enough that one of the men was riding it. He had unique triangular tattoos on both cheeks, short dark hair and this wildness about himself, there was no other way to describe it. As far as clothes went, he wore a simple set of black pants, dark brown sleeveless shirt and black sandals, similar to the ones many shinobi and civilians on the east wear. His name was Jetsu, and the dog's name was Akamaru, though Kasumi didn't understand the reason behind it. Oddly enough, there were 4 women in the group. The most outgoing was Saki, whose hair was pink like cherry blossoms. She wore a red and white travel dress. Yumi, another young female, seemed a little tomboyish to Kasumi, with the clearly male pants and shirt she wore and having her hair up in a single bun. But Hitomi, now this girl the merchant wouldn't mind to have as a daughter or maybe even a daughter-in-law, though none of her sons seemed appropriate for the girl, and she already rejected their offers of dates, always polite, very good-looking, and so ladylike that she could probably teach a few nobles a thing or two about manners and courtesy. It wasn't so hard to believe when you looked at ever-elegant Makoto-san, the matron of the three younger females. She was a great beauty, with her curled black hair and crimson eyes which almost literally radiated with strength and determination. Even the simple black and red traveling dress couldn't hamper her beauty, and neither did Hitomi's white and purple outfit. It was like the two could wear rags, and they'd still outshine most classy women. Next were the three other males, all older than the youngster with dog. The oldest was the man in a red haori over something that Kasumi could take as a battle kimono. His footwear seemed a little odd, being a pair of old-fashioned wooden jeta. The first thing that Kasumi took notice of, however, was the long and spiky white hair, being the longest she had ever seen on a man. He introduced himself as Jito and admitted that he's a novelist who travels through the world to write about his experiences. When he heard about the West being stabilized politically, he couldn't help but take some of his friends with him on this one amazing journey. The weirdest thing about his clothing was that he always hid his left arm inside his kimono sleeve, but Kasumi decided not to ask about this and instructed her sons to do the same. Sometimes people could be very unpleasant when having old scars and wounds pointed out to them. Tsukumo was another odd person. From his gravity-defying gray hair, though he didn't look older than his late 20s, to the mask and black headband that covered his face and left eye. There was nothing fancy about his outfit. It was just a dark bodysuit with a navy blue vest over it. His other companion, Yamato, had the same bodysuit, however his vest was forest green. From meeting at the fortress and then traveling for about a week, Kasumi and her sons got to know the 8-person one-dog group pretty well. She almost regretted when they arrived at the crossroads because Jito-san mentioned on more than one occasion that he wanted to take his companions to the capital of the empire, which was in the center of the nation, while the merchant family's home was in Gaiju, the main city to the south. However, this particular road had one attraction that caught the eastern foreigners' attention and helped to put aside the inevitable parting. "Hey, what's that?" Jetsu called out, pointing at the giant statue up ahead. It showed 8 figures carved in stone, all looking high and mighty in their poses, radiating with power. 2 figures in particular caught the Easterners' attention. They both had spiky hair and whiskered cheeks. "Those are the greatest heroes of the West," Kasumi said casually, while her sons rolled their eyes because they knew she was going to tell the same story that they had to listen to through half of their childhood. Until 4 years ago, the whole continent on this side of the 5 Peaks was in a never-ending war. Warlords and nobles bickered over lands, people, treasures and other stupid things. Demons and bandits roamed on the roads on a daily basis, they even destroyed some big cities. The only remotely safe place was Siki on the far west because Sokishu, the ruler of that place, was always just and kind to his subjects and any visitors. It's a great loss that he died from illness, but he was already very old at the time. Now his son Hakiyuko rules Siki, following the same principles that his father did to honor him and make sure that his beliefs won't perish. "He sounds like a marvelous man," Jito commented with a hint of admiration in his voice. "Bet his people loved him very much." "Aye, that they did, and when he died, the whole region was mourning him for 10 days. Now all citizens try to follow his example about being generous and kind to those that came to Siki. Don't get me wrong, however, as much as Lord Kishu-sama wanted his land to be peaceful, there were a few rotten apples that spoiled his dream. This one particular band called Kororyu no Kiba had caught Kishu's attention, their actions angering him beyond anything he'd felt before. Before he and his army arrived to the hideout of those scoundrels, however, a group of 7 warriors had already taken care of them. 7 warriors? Are those the ones here beside Lord Kishu?" Tsukumo asked, intrigued by the story. "That's right. Those on the left are Sun Wukong, the Monkey King of the Northeast Valleys, and his 2 friends, Tsunahashi, Sand Monk, and Buta, Wild Pig." Kasumi pointed at the statues of mentioned heroes. It wasn't hard to guess who is who because one wore monk's robes and the others looked like half human half animal, though the Monkey King also wore an armor that had rich inscriptions and details. Those 3 fought demons left and right even before the Unification War. The pair on the left, the guy with the sword and a young woman beside him, those are Temukai and Agawa Himiko respectfully. You won't find a swordsman alive that could ever defeat that guy. He's like the Ken no Kami, god of the sword, while his lover is said to have mastered the mystical arts of demonic powers, along with the powers of the elements themselves. I still remember her old nickname. "What was that?" Yumi asked, wanting to know more about the powerful female, while envying her for the man at her side, or more accurately, his sword. If the sculpture of the weapon was anything to go by, then this was one fine blade if the young girl could say anything. Agawa the bandit killer. She was famous, or rather infamous for taking out some big shot bandits and robbing them of their already stolen goods. Then she would just spend it the way she wanted, mostly on good food and old manuscripts. Everyone almost fell over after hearing a description like that. What about the last pair? Yamato suddenly asked. Ah, those two, not much is known about their names or where they came from. Some even say that they are from East, like you lot. How much truth there is to that theory, I don't know. But I heard that the two of them single-handedly destroyed several demonic strongholds during the war. The younger one also did something that all the people of the West didn't think was possible. He killed the great Mariuu Ogata, Demon Dragon King Ogata, making us free from its reign of chaos. Can you tell us their names? Jito was interested in this particular pair, as were the rest of his group, but some for different reasons than the others. Their names? Kasumi thought a little, feeling a little dizzy all of a sudden before shaking her head. Nah, can't remember them. The two were more known by their nicknames though. Bandits always shook in their boots when they knew he was near. What could be so scary? Jetsu asked. You tell me. A playful smirk appeared on the woman's face, making the younger man a little nervous. I, for one, wouldn't want someone who's called in Patsu Shakugan no Uchite, flame hair blaze-eyed hunter, after me, or get on the bad side of Kanjiki no Senshishu, golden master of the thousand spirits. Everyone gawked at Kasumi's statement. Those titles were known of even in the elemental nations. The first one never failed to track down his desired target and often left the area in flames when he was finished with his job, and his partner could take down any kind of fortress without siege weapons or an army, and rumors said he had nature itself on his side. Most, of course, wrote these tales off as mere rumors or ridiculous stories, however here they had living proof that at least half of what was heard about them wasn't a complete fairy tale. Neither to say, the Empire of the West had more to offer than the party from the East could have anticipated. Was it really necessary to manipulate the memories of that woman, Shingoku-sama? That seems like quite an overreaction. The giant cat chided his master as they continued to observe the group. The pair was hovering high in the air, with the priest sitting on the back of his friend, while a vision of the Easterners was displayed before them in an object that resembled a giant eye. Ma, don't be such a spoilsport, Tinko. I'm just making this a little more interesting. Shingoku replied as he ate from a bag of popcorn. How is it going to be more interesting? They know that Naruto-sama is here, but they're not aware of his position as the emperor. None of those shinobi suspect that when they see their old friend again, it'll be nothing like they anticipated. He took another handful of his snack and smiled. That is the amusement I just can't waste. Besides, our dear heroes also will be surprised when I drop them this little thing. Shingoku patted a small leather bag that was beside him. Garama-sama would have your head if he knew what you did. Tenko shook his head at the behavior of his friend. Manipulating the mind of a woman to later shock the outsiders was one thing, but interfering with the reports of the spies sent to the east. What that old fox doesn't know can't be blamed on me. Besides, he's just so much more fun when something gets on his nerves. The priest said in his amusement. When are you going to drop off those reports? And what do they say? The giant cat asked while ignoring the childish behavior of his master. He was curious about what was really going on the east. Don't worry. In a little while, they'll be in the right hands. As for their contents, Shigoku only smiled cheekily. Sarwa Himitsu Dezu, that is a secret. In the middle of the night, 8 people and 1 giant dog were sitting around a single fire, their makeshift camp not far from a small stream on a small clearing surrounded by a few trees. They were tired and hungry, but something else didn't let their minds rest. Every member of the group was very deep in their own thoughts, trying to understand all the information and rumors they heard of during the trip. However, they had a very important mission to complete and there was no place for any doubts. Tomorrow around noon, we should arrive in Juriyate, the capital of the empire. From there we'll try to gain an audience with the emperor. Jiraiya explained to the shinobi that came with him. Kiba was lying against Akamaru, Kakashi had his infamous orange book out, and Yamato just calmly listened to the Gamasenen's plan. The only reason he didn't build a house with his Mokuton wood element for the group to spend the night was because of the risk of using such a technique where the enemy could potentially sense it. Sakura, Kurenai and Tenten were sitting quite close to each other for no real reason. However, Jiraiya worried about Hinata, who had decided to stay further away from the group. The old shinobi saw this behavior from the very beginning of the mission. Still, the cold attitude of the Hyuga didn't stop her sensei and fellow Kunoichi from trying to convince Hinata to not cut them off. Hinata, come closer to the fire. It's freezing. Kurenai requested of her student gently, receiving only a silent stare from the pair of pearly eyes. The Jonin sighed dejectedly at this. Ever since the banishment of Naruto, Hinata had changed, and not for better. She became distant because in her mind, only she truly supported the blonde, while everyone else turned their backs on him. It was a betrayal that the gentle girl never expected from her closest friends. And the sudden death of her father, along with a drastic change in the leadership of the Hyuga clan, only worsened everything. Come on Hinata. Don't be so glum. If you're cold then come here and lie beside me. Kiba suddenly suggested in a little too friendly of a manner. Everyone around could see how the Inuzuka eyed his teammate's body. Ever since they were 15, he'd been trying to get a date, along with something more, from the quiet heiress. Akamaru's fur is very warm and he won't mind you, right boy? The only answer he got from the huge dog was a slight huff and a tired yawn. Hinata didn't say anything for a while. It wasn't like there was anything to say in this situation. She had ignored Kiba's advances for years now and truthfully, she was getting tired of him trying to get into her pants, which was obviously his goal ever since they were 15. It wasn't that hard to figure out. The Hyuga tried to ignore the talking, only paying attention when something mission-related was discussed, but other than that, she blocked everything else out. That is, until Sakura made an unfortunate comment. I still can't believe that Naruto is here somewhere in the Empire. To think that he managed to survive this long. I mean his skills were always law. Don't you dare. Hinata's ever so gentle voice sounded like the hiss of an angry animal. Until now, Hinata had never gotten in a confrontation with someone that disliked the boy of her dreams, but something just snapped inside her right then and there. Don't you dare to say anything else about Naruto-kun, Haruno-san. You are hardly knowledgeable enough to describe whatever skills he had or how strong he was. The venom dripping from Hinata's words stunned the pink-haired medic as well as other Konoha shinobi. Hinata-san, that was uncalled for, Kakashi tried to say, but was cut off by the still infuriated Hyuga. Shut up, Haddock-san. You're no different. Or did you forget all those times Naruto-kun tried to get training tips from you, only to be brushed off? Well, normally, Hinata wouldn't say anything like that to a superior, there was no one stopping her now. She had bottled her feelings up for too long and she needed to release at least some of them. What is going on with you, Hinata? Kurenai asked, stupefied by the shy girl's behavior. I know that the recent death of your father is hurting you, but that isn't a reason to. Are you deaf, Kurenai-sensei? The brunette cut off her teacher's sentence, tired of hearing lectures. Despite seeing the woman as a mother or older sister figure, there was only so much she could take from her. I never once mentioned anything about my father. I just find it insulting that incompetent and biased people are trying to judge someone's abilities while not truly knowing the person. What the hell, Hinata? Kiba suddenly snapped. Don't tell me you're still pining for that monster. He's either dead or fucking some bitch or maybe even plotting revenge on Konoha. And he would have every right to seek justice done to that ungrateful village. Hinata's statement shocked the people around her. Hyuga-san, you are treading a very dangerous path. Such a claim could be easily seen as a treason. Yamato said in a dead serious tone, however the heated glare of angry Byakugan eyes made even him reconsider his next actions. Sasuke certainly got away with treason well enough. If you ask me, the leaf betrayed itself when it betrayed one of its most loyal shinobi. If by some kind of twist of fate, Naruto-kun and I met again and he wanted me to join him, I'd gladly leave Konoha and start my life anew by his side. Hinata sighed heavily. However, this isn't possible. Not anymore. She thought to herself. But you have friends and family in Konoha. You are a damn good Kunoichi and a Chunin, with skills of a Jonin. Tenten tried to reason with her friend. And Naruto is the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi. The most powerful Biju. He's like an ignited exploding tag, ready to destroy everything around him at any moment. Remember what state he brought his teammate back in. Would you really risk everything and even betray your home for someone like that? In a heartbeat. Hinata answered calmly now, with all the seriousness she could muster. Without elaborating any further, the young Chunin just turned her back to the group, not wanting to put up with them for any longer. Jiraiya felt his old heartache. He didn't have to join the conversation, the topic was too painful for him, too fresh in his mind, despite the long 7 years since he last saw his godson. Neither of the loyal Sannin wanted Naruto to leave, however Tsunade could do nothing against a direct order from the daimyo, who supported the motion of the Konoha Council. Jiraiya, on the other hand, had been away from the village at the time, checking one of his contacts concerning the Akatsuki. He'd only just returned to the village a week after the deed had been done. Never was the old shinobi as ashamed of himself as he was the night when he heard Naruto had been banished. He felt like when Minato and Kushina died, all over again. The only hope that kept him going was that maybe, like Hinata put it, by some twist of fate, he'll meet Naruto again and then try to explain everything to him. The Gama Sennin didn't count on being forgiven, but he hoped to at least let Naruto know that there were always people who cared about him. So much more than anyone else in this crazy world. Jiraiya thought to himself while looking at the form of the sleeping Hyuga girl. Thus this conclude my report to today's meeting. We should rejoice that the final repairs in the southern and northern regions, which suffered the most during the war, have finally been completed. Naruto listened to the minister with a pleased expression. Both regions were very important to his kingdom, as the south soil was so rich in nutrients that when combined with the warm climate, the harvest was always very generous and could stock some of the regions that are less proficient in food production, like the north. Alas, the cold rocks and icy lands had their own treasures. Rare metals and salt mines were more common in those parts, along with some beautiful jewels that sometimes appeared to miners who exploited new veins in the mines. It was good to hear that the people of those two lands could finally catch a breath after those long repairs. How is the production of the new airships going? Kurama asked one of the advisors, a skinny man in formal blue robes with a very calculating look. The latest reports say that by the end of the month, they'll have finished 10 new vessels. With those, the Emperor will have 100 airships under his command. The man stated, at which the demon lord nodded approvingly. Faster than I expected. Naruto commented. He then felt someone's presence just outside of the palace, in the back garden. The blonde instantly knew who it was. Gentlemen, I think we can wrap things up here for today. I have another appointment, a rather sudden one. The young ruler glanced over at his former prisoner and wasn't surprised to see a deep scowl on his face. No one questioned their emperor, as every member of the council took their leave, while Naruto, with Kurama at his side, walked towards the nearest entrance to the palace's back gardens, which were a sight to see. A large area of greenery that was like a sanctuary for all who wanted an escape from the stress of everyday life. Once the paved alleys ended, one could step into paths going through seas of bright green grass, accompanied by well-tended and groomed trees. The paths curved and twisted, taking their guests to several locations in the garden, all worth seeing. A koi pond of great size, almost a lake in reality, was a home for several colorful fish, which could be looked upon through the crystal clear water. Not so far from it was a magnificent Zen garden, which could calm troubled minds and force you to reflect on any problems at hand before inspiring you to finding a solution for them. Lastly, there was a small temple on an island in the middle of the pond, a true sanctuary and a place where one could meditate to their heart's content without being disturbed. On the shore of the pond, both the young ruler and his advisor saw a man wearing Shinto priest's robes who was lying and relaxing under a peach tree, all the while eating a single fruit from it. There was also no way to not see the enormous cat that tried to catch a fish from the pond, but so far was without luck. Naruto and Kurama came closer to their guests, the old fox visibly seething at the mere sight of the man. Shinkoku. Kurama was glaring intensively, like he wanted to burn a hole through the priest's head. How dare you to just come here uninvited? And to have the nerve of eating fruit from the palace's gardens. I should have you executed. Ah, Kurama-san, you're still as pleasant to converse with as always. Shinkoku smiled widely, a gesture he knew would aggravate the demon fox. So, how's it going in your empire, Naruto Dono? Quite good, but I'm sure you already know that. Naruto answered calmly, still having his guard up. Thanks to his past experiences with a mysterious priest, the blonde couldn't afford any mistakes. Though I'm not so angry about it, I too wonder why you're here, Shinkoku. You never come to make a social visit and always leave before anyone can even ask a single question, however I hope you can answer this one. Why are you here? Looks like you know me all too well, Naruto Dono. Shinkoku exclaimed happily. He took out a few folders from the bag that laid beside him and handed them to the blonde man. You should read these. There are a few entries that you'll find interesting, to say the least. Not seeing anything suspicious in his guest's behavior, Naruto opened the first folder. After reading the first few paragraphs, the temperature around him started to drop rapidly and a huge amount of killing intent spiked from him, shocking everyone that was nearby, besides the priest, who still had a small smirk on his lips. Even the Kyuubi was surprised at his former warden's reaction. Whatever those documents read of, it was nothing good. How did you? Let's just say that Kurama's spies in the elemental countries are only the second best in the world. Seeing an accusing stare from his cat companion, Shinkoku coughed into his hand. And I may have taken a look at some of those papers, while my companion here distracted their previous owners and borrowed a few of them. The implication didn't take too long to elicit a reaction, judging from the shocked and mad face of the red-headed demon. I'll leave you now. There must be many things you want to do, and I have places to be. Bye-bye. The priest and his companion disappeared from sight, like they were never there in the first place, leaving a very angry fox demon behind. You bastard. When I see you again, I'll rip your liver out, chop it up, then fry it in oil and eat it with green onions. Kurama practically exploded. In his red eyes, one could see the desire to murder the insolent priest in the most painful and gruesome manner the humanized Bijuu could think of. No one messed with Fox's contacts or spy reports and got away with it without facing the consequences. However, the way Naruto was reacting to whatever was written on those scrolls halted any rash actions the redhead would otherwise take in such a situation. Uncertain, Kurama looked at his former warden, trying to figure out the blonde man's current thoughts. Kid. Naruto calmly closed the scrolls he was reading. While still in a foul mood, the young emperor didn't want to scare more of his staff with his killing intent, but that didn't mean his anger died. No, if anything, the burning rage was now a cold and calculating flame, calm like the sky just before a violent storm hits the unsuspecting land below it. Kurama, when those Konoha ninjas step inside the capital's walls, I want them taken into custody and brought before me. I leave the means of capture to your choosing, but they are to be unharmed unless you need to persuade them to cooperate. The Shiroma agents can help you with this task, as can the royal guards. No deaths are allowed. Naruto said with a regal tone in his voice, one that he used only when he needed the full attention of the court in very important cases. This must be one of them. As you command, your majesty. Kurama bowed before his superior. No mockery was in the demon lord's tone, just professionalism and deep respect. However, one thing didn't leave his mind and occupied his current thoughts. What could be written in that report? The group of Konoha ninja, still in their disguises as tourists, reached the Great Gate of Juriate, the capital of the empire. None of them could hide their awe at the sight of the biggest city in the west. The walls themselves were more than impressive. Humongous blocks of jade green stone were put together to reach the height of 100 feet, maybe more, while the watchtowers stood 20 feet above the rest. The outer side of the wall was ground to make it difficult for any hostile troops to climb them, while the soldiers on the walls and from the line of windows right below them would stop the enemy. The wall itself was more than 40 feet thick and the gates to the city were reinforced with steel and hardwood. All the while soldiers were stationed at vital points to make sure everything was in order. After getting permission to enter from the local guards, the next surprise for the group was the city itself, as it was clearly several times bigger than Konoha. There were stores with food of various kinds, clothes made from unknown materials, and other goods sold in the nearby stores. Rickshaws and carriages sped through the paved roads, people walking on the sidewalks in order to get their daily needs and duties done. In the distance one could spot clouds of smoke, marking where the industrial area of the capital was placed, and in the opposite direction was a large park where families spent their time together, surrounded by beautiful green scenery. As the shinobi from the east walked along the main street, they saw how happy all the citizens were. Even when they crossed through the slums, divisions of soldiers could be seen being busy in distributing bread and bowls of warm soup for the poorest members of society, while children also got fresh fruits added to their meals. Another group of soldiers was overseeing the building of what seemed to be a new shelter for those who didn't have a home, and on the other side a large white tent was put up, where medics from the Royal Medical Corporation were checking up every person who was sent to them. What didn't escape the ninjas' attention were the soldiers, patrolling the city in groups ranging from 5 to 10 units. They didn't look like the samurai that some could see in daimyo's courts, their armor looked different in design. Their helmets, for one, didn't have any kind of mask that a samurai would wear. Some had red capes with a black phoenix crest on their shoulders, probably to distinguish the rank among themselves, and their swords weren't like the standard katanas used on East, but more like sabers used by some tribes in the Wind Country. Jiraiya and other jonin of their company also caught very slight movements in the shadows of alleys and other places around them. This kind of thing could mean only one thing. They were observed, and while it was thought that there were no ninja clans in the West, there was no proof that such was fact. Knowledge is the greatest tool a ninja could use, and in this place, they had very little. Akamaru's not good in big cities. All these crowds and smells are making him nervous and me too, Kiba commented, all the while rubbing his partner behind his big ears. It did help some, but the Ninken, ninja dog, still whined from time to time. Just keep a watch on him, and be careful. Kurenai instructed her former student. We don't want to bring the wrong kind of attention on ourselves. Yeah, I know. All of a sudden, Kiba was on edge, and Akamaru growled threateningly. Before anyone could say something, Inyazuka and his dog shot forward, and the rest of the disguised ninja had no other choice but to follow. They found the two feral Inyazuka members cornering Sumoni or something. Hitai Tera. Malaka So. The person, or rather the creature that Kiba and his dog pinned to the wall, spoke in the unknown language, but that wasn't what caught the attention of Jiraiya and his group. What caught their attention was the being's appearance. From the sound of their voice, it was a male. He was quite tall, around 5 feet, wearing regal blue robes, like a monk or a priest, with a silver moon crest on their back. However, what truly shocked the Eastern shinobi was the face that looked like a cat's muzzle, with gray and black fur and 2 pointed ears on top of his head. Kiba. Stop this. Kakashi screamed at the younger man, but to no avail. It looked like whatever common sense was in Kiba's head was buried beneath the primal instinct of a dog seeing a cat. Halida. Halida. The catman screamed as Akamaru and Kiba were being dragged by their teammates. He was clearly distraught, his fur was visibly standing, and every few moments he was hissing at his 2 assailants. When Kurenai finally had enough of the circus, she cast a simple genjutsu on the boy and his dog to calm the both of them down, at least long enough until they got them away from this strange person. However, her hopes for a peaceful and quiet escape were short-lived. Hold it right there. A soldier shouted, judging from the cape on his shoulders, an officer, who brought at least a dozen guards, their weapons drawn, who quickly surrounded the group, cutting all possibilities of escape. You're all under arrest. On what charges? Tenten shouted. Assault of the ambassador of Kojima, espionage, and use of a genjutsu in a populated area. Our sentinels sense chakra coming from you, which leaves no doubt that you are shinobi from the east. The officer declared, stupefying the group. How did they know that? There is a law prohibiting the use of any non-civilian skills, chakra included, that only excludes the Royal Task Force and members of the Shiroma Order. Seeing as you have no insignia of either, this leaves no doubt in my mind that you aren't them. He then turned to his subordinates. Seize them and check if they have any weapons. We'll take them to the garrison for questioning. Contact the palace about the intruders. There is no need for all that procedure, officer. A voice called out before a single figure came out of one of the alleys, a tall man with blood-red hair and 3 marks on both cheeks, wearing a red haori and hakama pants. He was flanked by 2 Shiroma ninja, both wearing their signature white armors. His Imperial Majesty is aware of this intrusion and wants to personally question their reasons for sneaking into his kingdom. Kyuubi-sama, are you sure this is wise? The soldier didn't pay attention to the reactions of his captives at the name he just said. They may be assassins sent to kill the emperor. We're no assassins, Jiraiya tried to assure, but all he got was a blade of a saber at his throat. In your place I would stay silent, old man, or you might get hurt. Kurama warned the Toad Sage coldly. That goes for all of you as well. Keep silent and maybe you live to see tomorrow morning. Again he turned to the officer. As for you, we aren't here to question the will of our emperor, but to do his will. Now go back to your unit. I'll take those prisoners to the palace myself. As you command, Prime Minister. All soldiers bowed their heads in a sign of respect towards their superior, before turning around and leaving him with the Konoha ninjas. After a few quick words in his strange language, the identified ambassador just glared at the young man and his dog. Finally, he said something nasty in their direction, judging from the expression on his face, and strolled away. Now, you will all come with me to the palace. And before you try anything stupid, these guys are more than a match for any of you. Kurama pointed at the 2 white-clad ninja beside him. Kiba only scoffed, finally shaking off the genjutsu. These guys don't look like much Kyuubi, or should I say Naruto. There are just 2 of them and 9 of us. Besides, they're probably as pathetic as you always were. Not a second after those words left his mouth, Kiba found himself being thrown down to the ground and pinned by someone. The person was kneeling on his back, twisting his arm backwards and pulling his hair so the Inyazuka could look up at the person he was insulting just now. Listen here, mutt. Kyuubi seethed at the boy. There is a major difference between a prisoner and the warden. I'm not going to bother with details, but know this: Naruto bested you at the Chunin exams by farting in your face and then beating you up with his clones. He leaned close enough to Kiba's ear so that the next part of the message would be known only to the feral youngster. I would have just gutted you like a fish before the first minute was up. To add seriousness to his words, Kurama started to emit a little of his killing intent. Thankfully, he could control the radius of it so none of the civilians around them would suffer from it, but judging from the sudden smell of great fear coming from all Konoha ninja, they finally understood just who they were dealing with. Also, who said that these 2 were the only ones around here? The fox demon snapped his fingers and around 20 people appeared out of nowhere, all wearing the same white uniforms and carved masks to hide their faces. Now, if you finally stop being such a pain in the ass, get moving. His Majesty is waiting. Thankfully for the Konoha group, Kyuubi was guiding them across the less populated areas as to spare the majority of capital's residents the sight of the caught ninja. The last thing the emperor needed was a panicked crowd at his palace gates. For their credit, the shinobi didn't try anything to either escape or resist, either because they knew it was pointless or for some other reason. Kurama didn't really care as long as his job was less annoying. The squadron of Shiroma agents were all around them, just keeping to themselves and watching from the shadows. They were more subtle than a whole regiment of the city guards. Kurama was a little surprised when Hinata approached him to break the first ice. "Ah no, Kyuubi-sama." She started hesitantly. "May I talk with you?" "Be quick, Hyuga-san. We're almost at the palace." The demon fox replied in a gruff tone. "And call me by my name, it's Kurama." "Yes, of course, Kurama-sama." Hinata quickly said. "Please, could you tell me, is Naruto-kun alright? Is he safe?" "You mean, after I got out?" Kurama didn't miss the hidden message in the young woman's question. "Since you seem to be genuine in your worry, I'll answer your question, Hinata-san." The seal was broken by an outside force shortly after Naruto got past the 5 peaks, the mountains that separate the continent. I won't go into details because to this day, I still don't fully understand the mechanics behind this, but what I can tell for certain is the sensation. I was trapped inside the seal when all of a sudden, I felt like I was being ripped from my prison. My body got smaller and changed into what you see now. Seeing the curious gazes of all the older ninja, he chuckled darkly. I can still change into my previous form and I have all my chakra, while Naruto became so much more powerful without me. His gaze then fell on other Konoha ninja who were listening to this conversation. I'm not going to tell you how strong he's now. Let me just say this. Konoha threw out one of their greatest potential Hokages since Hashirama's reign. Because of that, I doubt he'll be very eager to see any of you. At those last harsh words, Hinata felt like crying, and Kurama knew that it wasn't fair to put her with the ungrateful village, but he felt that it was necessary for the girl to hear them now, as it'll save her from getting any hopes up, only to have them crushed. As the group crossed a courtyard, they had a full view of the palace. It was a castle several stories height, separated by segments, surrounded by 5 smaller, but still impressive towers, that created a pentagon diagram around the main building. This was a symbol of this land, a monument of the power held by the Emperor of the United Empire of the West. Before entering, a team of servants came to them and tried to take Akamaru on a leash, which the giant dog didn't like in the slightest, growling and barking at them. "What are you doing? Leave him alone." Kiba protested and went to punch the nearest servant, but he went docile when 3 kunai landed just an inch from cutting his toes off. Looking in the direction the knives came from, the feral ninja spotted one of the white-wearing Western shinobi, who stepped into the shadows just a moment later. Despite the commotion, one of the servants looked at the Inyazuka with a professionalism in his eyes. "We're just doing our orders to not let this dog into the palace. It's to be put in the kennels with His Highness's dogs, where it'll be washed, fed, and taken care of. We can't have animals of unknown origin running freely around His Majesty's home." Good thinking. Kurama applauded in his mind. This brat without his dog will not be even half as strong as they are together. Turning to Kiba, he leveled the human with ice-cold eyes and steel in his voice. "You better tell your companion to calm itself or I'll put him down permanently, right here and right now. Your choice, Inyazuka." Growling out in frustration, Kiba just walked over to his oldest friend. When he finished talking, Akamaru let himself be dragged away, knowing that they had no choice in the first place, considering Kyuubi's second option. The inside was also very impressive. There were many spacious halls and rose-red columns decorated with golden dragons that seemed to observe the Easterners with their unmoving eyes. Floors were paved with high-class marble and polished to the point that you could clearly see your reflection. The group was passed by the palace's guard several times, all looking at them suspiciously, never taking their hands from their weapons, always ready to stop any threat to their ruler. Their armors were a little different than city guards, lighter and not restraining soldiers' movements much. As for weapons, they all had long jiang swords strapped to their sides, as well as small daggers at their belts. At last they reached the doors to the throne chamber. Kyuubi turned to the ninja he was supervising. "When you go there, don't say anything unless spoken to directly, and if so, don't you even dare to try any smart talk with the Emperor. That could give you one-way ticket to the gallows." Hearing some people loudly swallowing after hearing his advice made the Fox Lord smile wildly. "Pray that His Majesty is in a good mood, well, you know what could happen." When the gates opened, once again the Konoha shinobi were amazed at what they were seeing. The throne chamber was in all cases magnificent, it could have easily had a small house put inside, and there would still be room to move around. Like the rest of the palace, the floor was made of polished marble, but here there were very expensive carpets laid down. More columns, 8 on each side of the chamber, stood firmly and proud, encrusted with gold and silver designs of various mythological animals and flora. And then there was the throne itself. The beautifully crafted chair was put on a cathedral, so that the emperor was always looking down on those who came to him. On each side of it there was a large bowl-like torch, which burned with brilliant gold and crimson flames, so bright that it was almost unnatural. Over the throne was a large banner with a black phoenix on a red background, surrounded by golden flames. The emperor himself was sitting calmly in his throne, his posture regal and noble. Just one glance at this person told Jiraiya that their next step will probably decide the success of the whole mission. Yes, there was much at stake, and he had to play a game that was always very unforgivable towards inexperienced players. "I have only one question for you, Konoha." The cold tone of the young ruler's voice sent chills down everyone's spine. Jiraiya already knew that his game just picked up on difficulty. "What are you doing in my country?" The game known as politics. Chapter 3. To say that the group from Konoha was impressed with the emperor was an understatement. Before them, on a high throne, sat a figure clad in royal robes of black and red, accented with golden threads. They could all feel the aura of power and majesty radiating from the person that managed to do the impossible and created a peaceful kingdom out of chaotic lands. Despite their best efforts, none of the Leaf Shinobi could see the emperor's face or even his hair, as both were covered by a large hood and a golden mask. The voice of the young ruler was also beyond recognition, as it seemed to have been deepened by something, making it sound very unnatural and frightening. "Clever move, kid. The mask has a seal inscribed in it to change the wearer's voice, and adding the hooded cloak was a nice touch," Kurama thought to himself. It was clear to him that Naruto didn't want to reveal his identity as the Emperor of the West to his former comrades just yet. This will be very interesting to watch. I will ask again, what is your group doing in my empire, Jiraiya of Konoha? The calmness of his question was unnerving. While Jiraiya had some experience in dealing with figures of power, he very much doubted that his usual tactics would work on this man. Nevertheless, the old sage had to do his best, as there was too much at stake here. Your Imperial Majesty, let me first express my awe of your kingdom and our gratitude at being able to witness the greatness of. Flattery will get you nowhere, old man, Kurama interrupted rather rudely. If there is something that's looked down on in this court, it's hidden agendas disguised by hollow compliments. Here you either are honest and blunt or you try to be smart and find yourself kicked out of the palace. My Prime Minister speaks wisely. I don't need nor desire to hear what you think of my kingdom, no matter how highly you admire it. What I do want to know is the reason as to why your group sneaked here under disguise, in a manner befitting of assassins and thieves. The shinobi all shivered at the statement and knew that if the wrong words were said, their lives would be endangered. A small hand sign from the Gama-senin made sure that the others would stay quiet and leave the talking to him. We came here with a very important message from both Konoha and the Fire Daimyo. Jiraiya took a scroll out from under his robes and presented it before the young ruler and his advisor. The god Hokage wasn't sure what state the Western Empire was in, so we were instructed to travel with extreme caution as to not jeopardize our mission in delivering this scroll to you, your highness. Kurama took the scroll from the old sage and opened it. After reading the contents, the demon lord nodded towards the young emperor, who acknowledged the gesture in kind. I must study the contents of this message and present it before my council. Are you able to wait for the answer? We are, Jiraiya confirmed, though his instincts were warning him that something would happen very soon. I'll give you my answer in a week. This no trivial matter and it demands that I'll present it before my council and listen to their opinions. Only then make any kind of decision. The emperor's words sounded plausible and logical, though the group from Konoha was rather disappointed that they had to wait several days before knowing if their mission was a success or not. There is, however, another matter that I have to resolve right now, mainly, what will I do with you? If it's not too much trouble, your majesty, we'll just find some motel in the city and wait for your decision. Jiraiya wasn't sure if his diplomacy skills were enough to convince the young ruler before him. Something about that question just unnerved him. Kurama chuckled loudly, making everyone focus on the humanized Biju. It won't be that easy, old man. You lot are the cause of an international incident and we have to deal with that. Then his face turned very serious as he directed his crimson gaze towards Kiba. The Sultanate of Kojima is a very important ally to the empire and you assaulted their ambassador. And don't even try saying anything about diplomatic immunity. Kurama barked when he saw Kurenai ready to voice her objection. You lot sneaked in here without an official announcement, the consent of the Sei Empire, or any regard to our laws, therefore your group won't be getting any of the privileges normally assigned to foreign diplomats. A satisfied grin crossed the demon lord's lips. If I had my way, I would give you the punishment that those cat folks would enact. It's fairly amusing in the right circles. And what exactly is that? Tenten couldn't help her curiosity, but seeing the fox's smile widen, she quickly regretted asking that question. Ever heard the saying cat got your tongue? Let's just say that the Kaji take it quite literally by ripping out the victim's tongue with sheer force. Seeing as the Konoha ninjas' faces quickly became green with disgust, Kyuubi couldn't help but deliver the finishing strike. I was once a witness of such an execution on a slave trader. The poor bastard's tongue was ripped from his very throat, making him choke on his own blood. Ah, how delightful his screams were. As entertaining as Kurama's sadistic tendencies are, we should focus on more important matters. The emperor had quite enough of his advisors' attempts to scare the living daylights out of the intruders, no matter how funny it was to see his former comrades squirm under the pressure. All of you will be contained within this palace's grounds, under the constant surveillance of the Shiroma guards, as well as the royal guards, and your group will be separated as to prevent any kind of information exchange and scheming behind the empire's back. The young ruler looked down upon the shinobi from the eastern countries, his gaze seemed to pierce through their very souls. He quietly signaled for the guards to come closer, 9 of them flanking the group of foreign ninja. These guards will take each one of you to your living quarters within this palace's grounds. Before you protest the separation, Jiraiya of Konoha, take it as a simple precaution from my position. I am well aware that these shinobi in Kunoichi are talented and well trained in their respective areas, therefore I can't have you all in one place, where you'll be able to combine your strengths and overcome weaknesses, supporting each other in a unified assault. The air suddenly chilled as the emperor directed his hard gaze on the toad sage, making the old man very uneasy. Should any of you cause any kind of trouble for any of my staff or this palace's guests, I will not hesitate to execute you all on the spot myself. This short sentence at the end, backed up with a dose of potent killing intent, silenced any kinds of protest from Konoha's team. We will abide to your rule, your majesty. Jiraiya had no other choice. The Land of Fire was in dire need of the Sei Empire's assistance, so there was no room for mistakes or sneaky approach, at least not at this very moment. With any luck, I may be able to see if Naruto is here and maybe even talk to him. It was hopeful thinking for the old shinobi, but the chance of meeting his student and godson was still there, no matter how small. Well, this is a little unexpected. When his team was walked out of the throne chamber, Jiraiya was the first to be separated from the rest and brought to a different part of the palace, flanked by 2 guards. They took him to a chamber that was most likely to be his quarters for the rest of the week, furnished rather modestly, with a regular bed, a small night table beside it, and a desk under a not too large window. All from time to time Jiraiya liked the luxury of the many motels he stayed in during his travels, as a ninja he was used to even worse conditions of living. The room didn't surprise the old sage, but rather the person who was already waiting for him there. Uzumaki Naruto, the blonde genin he came to know all those years ago, now a man of enormous power and status, stood before Jiraiya, his arms crossed over his chest, while his blue eyes, once full of wonder, joy, and a little mischief, were now cold, calculating, and unforgiving. So much has happened since that day, so many things were said and done, so many accomplishments achieved, and yet, the only regret Jiraiya had now was inability to help his godson more. Naruto, the blonde man didn't let his old teacher finish his statement. In a single blink of an eye, Naruto crossed a distance between them and sent a powerful punch to the super pervert's stomach. It was enough to make the once powerful member of the legendary Sannin stumble over. If not for the blonde's support, Jiraiya would be lying on the cold floor right now. After a few moments of uncomfortable silence, disturbed only by the wheezing sounds of the porn rider's attempts to catch a second breath, Naruto was the first to speak. "You have some nerve, Iro Sennin." While his voice became a little deeper and more mature over these years, there weren't any warm feelings in it. All that Jiraiya felt was great anger and grief, as well as a deep disdain, all currently directed at him. "Tell me, why are you here? Why can't Konoha leave me alone, even after throwing me out?" Naruto, they made a mistake. Another punch, this time a right hook straight into his jaw, successfully stopped Jiraiya from talking, and this time he was thrown to the marble floor. "Mistake. Mistake." Naruto's furious voice echoed in the small chamber like a loud thunder. "From the very beginning of my life I was scorned, ignored, and hated by that damn place. When I finally got some recognition, it was quickly squashed by the council. Then they sent me to rescue my best friend, only to almost get killed, and they have the gall to banish me for it. The only mistake I see here is that I didn't leave on my own sooner." The Cantman, that word struggled inside Jiraiya's mouth. That last punch really hurt, and he now had trouble speaking clearly enough. "Your dream was a childish delusion. It would never have come true." That one blunt statement was more painful than anything the old man felt now. "I met both of my parents after Kurama's seal broke 7 years ago, and they explained everything to me. I know the real reason I was made into a Jinchuriki, how they are chosen from people who are closely related to the current kage of particular hidden villages. About the custom of members of my mother's clan holding Kyuubi, and how she was the one before me. My own father sacrificed himself to save the village that spat on his dying wish the very next day." Pausing for a moment, Naruto gave the fallen sage a long look. He saw something that took him by surprise, though the cold expression on his face never changed. "What happened to your arm?" "This?" Jiraiya asked while revealing more of his left arm, or at least what was left of it. Instead of a normal human arm, there was a wooden prosthetic, very well made and evidently capable of conducting chakra, as far as Naruto's keen senses could tell. "A little something that I got after a skirmish with an old student of mine," Jiraiya commented offhandedly. "A little over 4 years after your banishment, the Akatsuki started to move around and get the Jinchuriki of the hidden villages. You may remember 2 of their members, Uchiha Itachi and Hoshigaki Kisame. They came after you during our mission to get Tsunade." "I remember." "Keep this short," Naruto curtly replied. "No need to be snappy," Jiraiya commented under his breath, then went back to his tale. "Me and a large squad of Anbu managed to track down and corner several of them, one of which was my former student from the time of the Third Shinobi War. Turned out that he was a puppet leader for the organization. I walked away from that fight with a severed arm, 6 cracked ribs, 4 more broken, damaged lungs, and a few more life-threatening injuries. None of the Anbu with me survived, and the town we fought in was completely obliterated by just one jutsu of his." The old man sighed deeply, reminiscing one of the very few moments he was close to death. How can a one man be capable of such destruction? Even here there are very few that could take out a whole town in one go. While there were many warriors in the imperial court with significant power and skill, more so if one would count the empire's allies, Naruto could only think of a dozen people that were capable of such feats. He possessed a legendary taijutsu, one not seen since the time of the Sage of the Six Paths, the Rinnegan. I don't know if he was a direct descendant or if it was something else that caused him to gain this bloodline. This taijutsu made it possible for him to master all 5 chakra natures, and what's more, he used 6 dead bodies, all of them with Rinnegan eyes, calling themselves 6 paths of pain. Each of his bodies had different abilities, each more deadly than the next, while their eyes had the same vision as all the others, meaning they each saw what the others saw. Jiraiya looked toward some point in the distance, losing his focus a little. His name was Nagato. I met him and 2 of his friends, Yahiko and Konan, during the Second Shinobi War in the outskirts of Omegakure. I trained them for almost a year before we parted ways. Then I received a message saying that they all died, but obviously that wasn't entirely true. Yahiko died during a revolution in AIM, and that is most likely what pushed Nagato over the edge. Jiraiya's eyes became a little misty at the memories of the 3 cheerful orphans he took under his wing so many years ago. Seems that I'm a true failure as a teacher, with all my students either dead or banished, well I could do nothing. Spare me your theatrical grief, Naruto said coldly. It's far too late for any of that. Now tell me, just what is Konoha planning in trying to get the Emperor's approval of this alliance? Or better yet, explain to me how things could be in such a bad state. Huh? Jiraiya's clueless response made the blonde almost fall on his face. Don't me, Iro Sennin. Naruto yelled. We have reports about Konoha's situation, shinobi losing their rights for the sake of civilians, the council throwing their weight around, the Hokage being only a figurehead. What the hell are you talking about? The old sage looked like he was utterly surprised at those revelations and wasn't sure if his old apprentice was joking, bluffing, or just misinformed. I'll admit that after you left we lost many important contracts and alliances, mainly from the countries you made major impacts in during some of your missions, but nothing you just said took place. Tsunade was quite adamant in making up for the lost profit and even managed to cut costs in the council, both on the shinobi and civilian sides. Jiraiya thought a little while, pondering over what he just heard. I'll also admit that the spies of the West are quite good, but thanks to an anonymous tip I got 2 years ago, my own network was able to send them on a wild goose chase with some major events. If not for that little info my whole network would be in shambles, thanks to the Emperor's own spies. Naruto narrowed his eyes to merely slits as a strong aggravation slowly built up inside his body. Oh, he was very sure about the identity of this mysterious fellow. When I get my hands on that accursed priest, I'll make sure that he won't be meddling with the state secrets or the Empire's operatives ever again. Despite those dark thoughts, the blonde man couldn't help himself but laugh loudly, mostly at the irony of one guy, no matter how extraordinary, managing to play him, the most powerful man on the whole continent, the former prankster king that could fool the elites of a ninja village, like an instrument. One would find such facts terrifying, but Naruto could see here what his former Jonin sensei called underneath the underneath. What's so funny? Jiraiya asked a little confused. I'm just imagining how Kurama will react to the fact that his spies were compromised by one man. Naruto answered with a large grin. In a secret chamber, deep down under the palace's dungeons, the prime minister of the Sei Empire, a Bijuu in human form, once known as the Kyuubi no Yauko, now famous as the Inpatsu Shakugan no Uchite, Kurama was observing the conversation between his former container and Konoha's Toad Sage through the special ability he gained during the Unification War, Kokoro no Mi, Eye of the Mind. He wasn't spying, more like supervising. Through the length of those 7 years since Naruto had left his home and country, the demon took it upon himself to protect the young blonde and raise him to be a warrior that wouldn't be afraid of any foe. Thanks to the mysterious powers of Master Guandu, the one that broke the seal and gave him his current form, it was much easier to fulfill this goal. Currently however, the whole camera was filled with potent killing intent. A sensory ninja wouldn't be able to stay sane after feeling such monstrous amount, and even veteran shinobi wouldn't be able to stand it for too long. Thankfully for the whole capital the room was sealed to prevent any leaks of secret informations, and that meant sound, light, strong emotions, and chakra were all absorbed by the seals in the walls. Neither Kurama nor his agents of the Secret Service needed light to see things, so there were no torches or lamps present in the room. Now the seals were working overtime, as the full potential of Bijuu's killing intent almost overwhelmed and overpowered them. I'll find that damned priest, even if I have to turn over every rock, every pile of dirt, bring down every tree. Kurama was mumbling to himself, his rage spiking every few seconds. I'll find him even if it's the last thing I do. And when I do, I'll kill him in the most painful way imaginable. He will suffer. Gahahaha. Jiraiya shivered, he really didn't want to get on the Kyuubi's bad side. He had enough life-threatening situations in his life, he didn't need another. Putting those thoughts aside, there was something more he needed his former student to hear. Naruto, I have a message from Tsunade and the daimyo in case we manage to find you here. What could the Hokage want from me? I'm no longer tied to that village, so she can't order me around anymore. Don't be like that. Tsunade still cares about you, even if she was unable to stop the banishment order, which she regretted very deeply over the years. Jiraiya sighed deeply. This is an official order. If we manage to find you, Tsunade wanted me to relay a message from both her and the daimyo. I'll skip the boring part and get to the point. We want you back. Nani? Naruto asked calmly, but his tone was very cool. The banishment then got revoked. Not exactly. Jiraiya shifted uncomfortably as the blonde's blue eyes focused on him with a greater intensity. Listen Naruto, Tsunade really pulled her authority to let you inside the village, but only to stand trial for desertion. Yare, we're not joking, are you? Naruto asked, bewildered at the absurdity of the notion. I'd like it to be a joke, but there was no choice in the matter. Well, we managed to clean up both village councils, there were still many powerful people left that didn't like you. They had enough influence in the daimyo's court to make it an official order. Therefore, if we were to find you here in the west, then our group was supposed to take you into captivity and drag you to the village for the trial and eventual penalty if you were to be sentenced. This is ridiculous. Naruto roared. They banished me from my home just because I used excessive force on a guy that wanted to kill me. And now they have the balls to accuse me of desertion. I really don't know if I'm supposed to be pissed, amused, or if I should just ignore it. Naruto, this is really serious. The Fire Country and Konoha will go to war soon, and so will the other elemental nations and their respective villages. Uchiha Madara, or rather someone who uses that name, is the real leader of the Akatsuki, and he declared war upon all hidden villages just a few weeks ago for not giving him Kyuubi and Hachibi. There is no way that the current Raikage would sell his own brother, and you were outside of our borders for this long while. The motion is basically a piece of trash. The fact remains that the Akatsuki won't rest until you're in their hands. I'm no longer Kurama's Jinchuriki, if you hadn't noticed it yet, and Kurama won't give up easily. Besides, I'm far better protected here, inside the empire, than I would be in Konoha any day. Naruto suddenly smirked at a very interesting thought. You know, Iro-sennin, I think I'll ponder a little about going back to that village, but not as a prisoner or with the intention of staying. If anything, I'll go there to put some of my inner demons to rest and settle some unfinished business, but nothing more. But that is just a thought. I'm not promising you anything at the moment, as it also depends on whether the emperor will be willing to agree with this voyage. Jiraiya sighed deeply. This wasn't the response he hoped to get, but it was still more than enough. Alright Naruto, it's not like I have any choice in the matter. Granted that Kyuubi, or Kurama if you will, is a prime minister to the emperor, then I have every right to assume that you are an important figure here. Would you tell me where you stand in the court? No can do, Iro-sennin, but just to assure you don't do anything stupid here, His Majesty considers me a very close friend. You could say that fighting a war together gave us insight to each other and bonded us in a way that is hardly describable to anyone outside of our small circle. Naruto started to walk out of the room before he abruptly stopped. Oh, I almost forgot. You and your team are currently under a 3-day house arrest as punishment for the incident with that dignitary, so don't even think about sneaking out of this chamber. And once this is lifted, don't even think about going towards the Sacred Flower Monastery. Why not? Some kind of state secret. A sacred place for some Western cult. No, it's just that all men are forbidden there. Even the emperor himself isn't an exception to this law. The monastery is run by an order of female warriors that pride themselves in their skills, ranging from espionage to seduction, even assassinations, Naruto explained. They are a valued asset of the empire, and His Majesty respects their laws and customs. No man is to disturb them or cross the high walls around their temple, and they have the right to deal with anyone who tries it in any manner they see fit. The blonde brought his hand up to his chin in a thinking pose. Now that I think about it, the last time a pervert managed to get around their guards into the bathing area, he was sentenced to serve there for the rest of his life. Doesn't sound like such a bad punishment to me, Jiraiya commented with a lecherous grin, to which Naruto only smirked evilly. I forgot to mention that the male servants there are all eunuchs. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle as his old mentor suddenly became green in his face and started clutching his crotch at the thought of being deprived of his jewels. I'll leave you to your thoughts, and you'd better heed my warning, Iro-sennin. Without glancing back, Naruto left the room and walked quickly towards his own chambers. He had plans for the evening. After the audience with the emperor, the guards escorted the shinobi through the enormous palace. Every so often one of them would veer off from the rest with one of the Konoha ninja and take them to their quarters. Again, they were warned against causing unrest while in the empire. Additionally, the captain of the guards made it clear that unless someone ordered differently, the shinobi were to stay inside their rooms for at least 3 days as a penalty for disturbing the peace in the city and the battery against a high-ranking diplomat. Also, their chakra was sealed by specially made collars. None of the eastern shinobi were able to identify the materials, but it appeared that the main part was made from a purple metal that seemed to get a little warmer over time before cooling down again, probably absorbing and exhausting chakra. Such a system would prevent practically anyone from overpowering the collars by bursting chakra violently through them, as well as guarantee that the prisoners cannot focus their inner energy properly, making all their jutsu for the most part useless. Hinata sighed deeply. She was currently lying on a bed in the room that was assigned to her, thinking deeply about the recent events. Even though the separation from the rest of her team unnerved her a little, she was a little glad to be away from Kiba and his raging hormones. Currently most of her thoughts were running around a certain blonde boy that she last saw 7 years ago. How she longed to see him again, his cheerful face, mischievous blue eyes, that sun-kissed spiky hair, and the cute whisker-like marks on his cheeks. The young Hyuga was especially curious about how much he's changed over the years, how tall he was, did he have a lean body build? Or did he become more muscular? The more Hinata's thoughts focused on those questions, the more she felt a heat rising steadily from her otherwise pale cheeks. Another thought she had was whether or not he remembered her. Would he recognize the shy girl she once was, after all these years? Hinata didn't like bragging, but she did feel a small amount of pride at how her body matured through the course of time, even if it did make her more than a little uncomfortable in certain situations. The young woman also wondered if Naruto would find her attractive, if she would be appealing to him. That thought alone was more than enough to make her blush even harder, a Naruto-related habit that she couldn't and wouldn't get rid of. Then came something more depressing. Did he hate her along with the villagers who hurt him so much? Would Naruto ever forgive her for not coming clean with her feelings for him until it was too late? Was that one short letter a comfort for him, or just an annoyance? Her musings were interrupted by a knock on the door. Taking in the fact that she was practically a prisoner, this act of politeness left Hinata a little surprised. "Come in." When the door opened, inside stepped a young woman with long chestnut hair, a pretty round face and large green eyes, accented with only a touch of makeup. She wasn't taller than Hinata, and most likely around her age too. The dress she was wearing was humble, only a set of cream-colored robes that reached down all the way to her ankles, tied together with a wide white sash, similar to Obi's Hinata herself used when wearing a formal kimono during celebrations and important events. "Excuse my intrusion, Hyuga Hinata-sama." The woman's voice was very pretty, it sounded to the young Kunoichi like silver bells, already soothing any tension that could be in the air. "My name is Aiko. I am a servant in this palace and I'm here on behalf of Kurama-sama with a private message for you. Would you like to hear it? From Kurama-sama?" Hinata was completely confused at this point, as she couldn't find a reason for someone as powerful as the Kyuubi getting interested in her, someone whom the young Kunoichi found plain and unworthy any attention. "What does he want from me?" "Kurama-sama wants to express his gratitude towards you for your words of concern regarding his former vessel, Naruto-sama. He officially invites you for a private audience with His Majesty, which will take place when the sun starts setting. This of course will be accompanied with a meal, as both Kurama-sama and the Emperor felt it's good manners to not starve their guest." Aiko never lost her sincere smile while reciting the message she was supposed to deliver. "Would you accept the invitation, Hinata-sama?" Hinata felt truly at loss. Both the Prime Minister and the Emperor want to see her over supper and talk to her directly. While the whole notion sounded surreal to the Hyuga, she also saw an opportunity to convince the Emperor to aid Konoha in its cause and maybe get more clues about Naruto's whereabouts. Despite her animosity towards majority of population of her home village, along with pure spite for the ruling council, there were still good people living there, and Hinata didn't want them to die in a war that would most likely destroy all the elemental nations. Also, she longed to see her crush after all those years, no matter what fears she had about doing so. "I was under the impression that my whole team and I were under house arrest for the next 3 days," Hinata said with a slightly confused expression on her face. "Was that order changed?" "I apologize, Hinata-sama, but I do not know any details about the situation. I was only instructed to give you this invitation. You will have to ask Kurama-sama or His Majesty directly about your team's punishment, should you choose to join them. I have to use this opportunity to my advantage. This is my duty to both Hokage-sama and myself," Hinata thought with determination, while giving Aiko a sincere smile. "I humbly accept the invitation. Though I'm a little underdressed for a meeting with the Emperor, and I could use a bath after these long days on the road. Of course. I was also instructed to escort you to the bathing area of the Sacred Flowers Monastery. There you will also be given new clothes, befitting a woman of high stature as yourself. Now if you would please follow me, we can start getting you ready." The rest of the day passed in one big blur to the young Hyuga, full of relaxing baths, measurements for new clothes, trying on different sets of robes, being swarmed by seemingly countless regiments of servants fussing over her, before finally setting for a simple light pink dress that reached her ankles, covered with a little darker skirt-like vest, accented with a red sash tied in the middle, and a pair of very comfortable shoes which covered her feet entirely, unlike the sandals used by the shinobi from the east. As accessories, Hinata received a pair of sapphire earrings, and her chakra-restraining collar was swapped for a beautiful necklace with a set of crystals on the whole length of golden chain. Finally, a small touch of makeup was added to accent her already unique beauty, with a few drops of perfume on her long slender neck. Before Hinata knew it, she was already standing outside of the chamber to the dining room that the Emperor chose for this evening's meal. The kunoichi was trying to calm her nerves, think of the best way to approach the ruler of the Holsei Empire and get him to look with approval at Konoha's case. Swallowing any remaining fears, Hinata let one of the two guards standing outside open the doors for her. Watch V=VU04 Jumjuk Once Upon a Time in China theme song slow version. The dining room was enormous, with large open windows and a balcony-like view, where one could see the whole capital and what lay beyond it, all of which was now covered in the golden glow of the setting sun. In the middle stood a big round table with tableware prepared for two. Hinata recognized that the dishes were made from very expensive china and decorated with very beautiful paintings of nature and other shapes. The next thing the young woman noticed was the emperor himself, sitting on a pillow with an instrument, similar to an Eastern koto, before him. He still had his gold helmet on, but the robes he now wore were different than those the Hyuga saw him in the first time around, as his imperial majesty swapped his gold and red clothes for something more easy on the eyes, a sea green haori over a black kimono and black hakama pants. The haori had a golden bonsai tree sewn on the back, surrounded by silver clouds and creating a majestic image. The emperor was still playing as Hinata listened and made her observations. She didn't want to interrupt the performance, both because it would be very rude to do so and because she felt strangely captivated by the rather simple yet deep melody. Fingers seemed to swim through the strings, extracting sounds that together seemed to tell an entire story. There was sadness, melancholy, but also joy and ideals, the sun and the moon, dancing along the stars on the dark sky. A dream that a man could chase and honor all people are bound to uphold. Almost too soon everything went silent as the player ended his performance. Taking notice of his guest, the emperor stood up and took a long glance at Hinata. I must apologize to you, Hyuga-san, for not greeting you upon your entrance. When I give myself to music, I often forget about the rest of the world. Forgive my rudeness. He bowed to the young maiden, making her all the more uncomfortable. No, please, your highness, there is nothing to be sorry about. I was actually honored to hear such a beautiful melody. Nothing I've heard before could compare with what your majesty just performed. Hinata was truthful in her words, as the seemingly simple song reached down to her soul and stirred it in ways the kunoichi had never experienced before. You flatter me, Hyuga-san, but I'm sure there are many more talented musicians out in this world who dedicate their whole lives to perfect their skills. For me, music is just a simple pastime that puts my mind at ease after a stressful day. He then motioned to the table. Please let us sit and talk while waiting for the meal. Accepting the offer, Hinata took a seat opposite from the emperor. For a few awkward moments she wanted to start a conversation, but the words seemed stuck inside her throat. To make the matters worse, she was absolutely parched. Thankfully, though, there was a glass of water beside her platter. Taking a few sips, she began feeling much better. For this short while, a servant came to the emperor's side and whispered something into his ear, making the ruler of the West stand up, and Hinata quickly followed suit. Again, I have to ask your forgiveness, Hyuga-san. An important matter of state requires my immediate attention, which prevents me from dining together with you at the moment. I understand, your majesty. Therefore, I will return to my chamber and excuse my interruption, but there is no need for that. The emperor's words, as well as the quite joyous tone of his voice, confused the Eastern woman a little. While I am unable to dine with you tonight, there is someone who already requested a meeting with your person at the earliest available opportunity. I have no objection to granting this request now. Right then the doors opened and a new person came in. I'll leave you two alone now. Good night, Hyuga-san. Hinata bowed as the emperor left the room. Once he was out, she glanced upon the man that now stood a few feet from her. He was a little taller than her, maybe a couple of inches, had lightly tanned skin, and was most definitely her age. The man's clothes consisted of dark brown hakama pants, a blue kimono top, and an orange and black haori draped over his shoulders, with a red swirl-like symbol on the back. His messy blonde hair, cobalt blue eyes, and set of three whisker-like markings on his cheeks were what made Hinata sure of who this man was. Hey there, Hinata. His voice was no longer childish, having deepened with age. It was almost enough to make her faint. Long time no see. Naruto-kun. Chapter 4. Hinata was silently eating her meal, trying her hardest not to gape at the figure sitting right across her. She couldn't utter even a single word, and the supper was awkwardly silent. Neither of the two occupants of the room wanted to break the silence, though in Naruto's case it was most likely because he was busy stuffing his face in a comical manner, slurping down what seemed like his sixth bowl of ramen-like soup. Hinata couldn't help a giggle that escaped suddenly from her when she remembered all her observations of the blonde boy in the past at his favorite ramen restaurant. Despite all the changes that happened in his life, it seemed to Hinata that Naruto's manners remained as unrefined as when he was a kid. Naruto looked up, his mouth full of food, noodles still hanging from his mouth. You should something. That was it, seeing her old crush's face stuffed like that, with his cheeks puffed like a squirrel's, was simply too much for Hinata to handle, and the kunoichi just started to laugh. Naruto managed to swallow the mouthful of his food, all the while listening to the sounds of the young woman's gentle giggles. Something stirred inside him, it was like Hinata's voice was intoxicating and he couldn't get enough, especially if it expressed her happiness. Once Hinata managed to get her laughter under control, she blushed a pretty bright cherry color, embarrassed at her own behavior. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. Hinata apologized sincerely, her normally pale cheeks still stained with a rosy blush. When I saw you eat like how you used to when we were younger, I just couldn't help myself. You looked very cute. Don't worry about it, Hinata. Naruto exclaimed, a toothy grin playing across his lips. It's not often I'm called cute, especially when I'm eating, he admitted, while winking at the woman, causing another bunch of smaller giggles. Besides, you have a very pretty voice when you're laughing. Once more, Hinata's cheeks heated up from the compliment the full-grown man gifted her with. For some reason the blonde youth felt something akin to perverse pleasure through teasing his former comrade, she was just so adorable when blushing. Naruto then remembered that he had a few things on his mind that needed answers. Hinata, can I ask you something? Why are you here? What do you mean, Naruto-kun? The Hyuga woman felt a little surprised and hurt from the question. Was he upset that she took part in this mission? I had to see you again even if there was very little chance to find you. This can't be the only reason. It actually is, Naruto-kun, Hinata replied, her eyes focused on the blonde man before her. After you left, I felt hollow. Everything changed and it was for the worse. The rookies stopped trusting each other, divided to those that still believed in you and those who sided with the council's decision after hearing of you being a demon vessel. Teamwork between the different teams was practically non-existent and within them there were still small tears that couldn't be mended. The young woman's lips curved into a small smile. Thankfully for me, Shino-kun became the center of my team, always supporting me in my belief of your innocence, despite what Kiba and Kurenai-sensei said. I do not hate them, but Kiba became too wild for me to tolerate and sensei tried to persuade me to move on from my feeling toward you, not understanding that her efforts were futile. Hinata's smile became more bright as a gentle blush now adored her otherwise pale cheeks. I love you, Naruto-kun. I can now say it without fear. Even if you don't feel anything back, I'm just glad I could finally admit my own feeling to you in person. Naruto said nothing at this confession, as both Hinata's words now and the content of the letter she left for him before his banishment played over and over again in his head. It was clear that despite the 7-year gap from the last time they saw each other, Hinata still felt strongly about him. There was no deceit in her words, no hidden agenda, it was like she truly came here just to see him. After everything that happened, Naruto had a very hard time trusting anyone from his past life, even someone as kind and innocent as Hinata. He briefly wondered how Kyuubi was doing in dealing with the everyday duties of the emperor. Most likely the old fox was constantly complaining about the amount of paperwork involved. Naruto decided to give his prime minister some time to himself after this whole ordeal with Konoha got resolved. Right now, however, he had a lovely lady to entertain. Just as Naruto wondered about what to do after their meal, a mischievous glint sparkled in his blue eyes. He was sure that Hinata would either scream her head off from either fear or anger at him, but what could he do? Pranks were just so much fun. Hinata. Naruto called to the Kunoichi to get her attention. His eyes still sparkled and his lips were wearing this grin that had bad boy all written over it. Hinata knew that whatever the blonde man had planned it was against any rules that applied here. Would you be interested in ditching this place? She was right. Nani? I'm taking you out of this stuffy palace, that's what. Naruto proclaimed confidently with a wide grin on his face, while Hinata looked more than alarmed, remembering the emperor's decision earlier that day. I can't, Naruto-kun. His Majesty said that my team has to be punished for Kiba's actions. I don't want you to get into trouble because of me. She tried to reason with him, but it was useless. Once Naruto thought of something, he won't back away from it. No worries. I'm quite close to the emperor, so there is no issue. The blonde man got up from his seat and stepped towards the Hyuga Kunoichi, extending his hand to her. Do you trust me? Hinata stared at her longtime crush, musing over his words. Now was a good opportunity for her to see his face more clearly and without fainting, unlike when they both were younger. Naruto's eyes shined in the dimming light of the evening sun, his whiskers-like mark seemed a little more refined and wider, all traces of baby fat gone, and the young man's jaw was more lean and cheekbones more profound. Taking all those things into consideration, as well the fact that she wanted to believe him, Hinata didn't take long to be convinced. Alright, she said and took his outstretched hand, getting up from her seat. Where are we going? First we must get to the balcony. What for? Hinata cocked her head a little to the left in confusion. Naruto found the gesture very adorable, judging by the light blush that dusted his whiskered cheeks. Well, two can play at this game. Ulysses, Naruto said in a sing-a-song voice, causing the Kunoichi to giggle a little. The pair made their way to the terrace. Naruto was still holding Hinata's hand and couldn't help but relish in the feeling of her soft skin against his own, all the while the shy woman was almost blushing a storm. Once they were outside, Naruto let go of her palm, much to the disappointment of them both. "Now I'll call our ride. Better stand back a little." Without going into further details, the blonde put 2 fingers into his mouth and whistled loudly. After a few moments there was a loud thunder-like bang, and a large shadow descended upon the pair from the sky, its speed accelerating with each passing second. Just as Hinata thought that the thing was going to hit them, the strange shadow suddenly turned left of them, making a wide circle to finally slow down and land right before the blonde, making the floor under the pair quake a little. Hinata's eyes widened in surprise to see a long, serpentine body, covered with shining navy blue scales and a thin batch of black fur, going from the back of the creature's head, adorned with a thick mane in the same color, all the way along the spine to the tip of a bushy tail. Large bat-like wings were now folded against its sides, making the reptile a little smaller than when it was in the air, though not very much. Each of the 4 strong feet possessed 4 razor-sharp-looking talons, 3 in front and 1 at the back. Finally, the creature's large head turned towards the young woman, showing rows of deadly teeth in its mouth, a wide flat nose, 2 horns growing from the back of its head, and finally, golden cat-like eyes. Thaw that's the dragon. His name is Kiryu, Naruto answered easily, grinning like cat that got the canary. His date stuttering and flustered behavior more adorable every time he managed to shock her. Seeing that Hinata couldn't believe her Byakugan-wielding eyes, Naruto walked towards the woman, put his hands on her shoulders, and slowly brought her closer to the mighty beast. "Don't worry, you're safe with me. Think you could give him a pat?" Before Hinata could even squeak in protest, Naruto took her reluctant hand and gently but firmly raised it above their heads. The dragon looked at the pair intently, then lowered its long neck and touched the woman's open palm with his snout. Kiryu's warm breath engulfed Hinata's entire arm as she marveled at both the hardness and hotness of the scales. Her heart almost melted when the dragon let out loud purrs, signaling that he enjoyed the contact. "This is so amazing," Hinata whispered in bewilderment. She would have forgotten that Naruto was behind her if he hadn't leaned close to her ear, his breath tickling her sensitive skin and causing shivers to go up her spine. "If you think this is good, then you'll love what's coming next." Naruto let go of her and came closer to the dragon, which strangely enough backed away from the blonde. He tried again, but the result was almost the same, with the only difference that Kiryu snorted a cloud of smoke at the blonde. "Kukak. What are you doing?" Naruto asked and the dragon let out a few deep throat noises. While Hinata didn't understand a thing, it seemed that her crush actually did. "Oh come on. You can't still be mad about that one incident, can you?" The dragon had something akin to a deadpan expression, if that was even possible. "That was months ago." "Ah no, Naruto-kun. What's going on?" Hinata asked, completely confused by the whole ordeal. "Let's just say I had one little accident and this guy just can't let go of a grudge," Naruto said while glaring accusingly at the mythical beast, who at the same time was trying to look smug. I may be speaking out of my place, but you have been a tiny bit reckless when we were younger." "Me? Reckless maybe in my genin days I was a little hot-headed, but I've changed over the years." "Really, just how many times was I reckless in the recent years?" Naruto asked and got his answer in the form of a dragon's head sticking beside him. Kiryu let out puffs of black smoke in regulated and even breaths, which was all Naruto needed to know that his scaly friend was actually counting. "That was a rhetorical question, you overgrown purse." He seethed at the creature, his scowl only deepening when he heard something that could be described as laughter from the dragon, while the blonde's left eyebrow twitched madly. Hinata had a feeling that this situation will take some time to clear itself. She couldn't even decide who would prove to be more stubborn, Naruto or the dragon. Kurama walked down the corridor of the Imperial Palace's upper floor towards his office, while the masked figure of the Emperor accompanied him. In his hands, the fox was holding several documents that needed to be revised and approved, and even though Naruto should be the one doing it, Kurama knew just how much this meeting with the Hyuga meant for his former host. Therefore he decided to relieve the young man from most of his duties for a short while. "Oh, Kurama dono. Long time no see." A jovial and familiar voice called out, making the Prime Minister to stop in his tracks and turn around. Ilo, one of the oldest members of the Royal Council, stepped into the light from behind the corner. He was a very old man, older than even Sarutobi Hiruzen, the late Sandaime Hokage, would be if he was still alive, where some rumors said that he was already over 200 years old, though no one knew his true age. Despite that, the old man could easily give a lesson or two in humility to people 10 times younger. The old master was a medium height of 5 feet and 3 inches and quite thin. A long white beard went down from his chin, while his silver hair were braided into a single top knot, being held in place by a smooth jade comb. His attire consisted of sleeveless buttoned indigo tunic with a 1-inch collar, a light blue undershirt with long sleeves and wide cuffs, black cotton pants, and a pair of humble yet comfortable shoes. "That is true, Pilo Dono." The last time we saw each other was over a year ago. While Kurama was more than a little surprised to see the old man, he didn't want to show it. Even though his presence at the palace is a rare occurrence, Pailo was still a very high figure in the royal council, respected by both nobles and common people. Due to his advanced age and the important role he played during both the Unification War and the Restoration Movement, Naruto granted the old man a privilege to keep his seat on the council and have a peaceful life outside of the state affairs, thus his rare comings to the palace. What brings you here? Forgive this foolish old man for barging without any form of announcement, Kurama Dono, however there is something I'd like to discuss with his majesty. Pailo shot a quick glance at the still silent form of the emperor and turned back towards the demonic prime minister. I would prefer to speak with him in person and not to his mirage, if you forgive my rudeness. Kurama grinned wildly before striking the image beside him, making the emperor disappear in a manner of a fog or thin black smoke, without the kind of popping sound that Naruto's Kage Bunshin give out. Should have known you of all people won't be deceived by Kit's technique. After all, you're the one who showed him how your Kayaka Sujetsu, Mirror Flower, Water Moon, works. It was only a matter of time before he created his own variation of it. That's certainly true, Pailo admitted with a smile on his face. Young Naruto was certainly an interesting fellow to teach, though still very impatient, as all young people are. However, it is not the time to remember the old times. The old warrior's brows knitted together a little bit, and while his lips haven't lost their smile, his eyes hardened on the humanized demon before the old master. I actually came here to speak with the both of you about several matters. Unfortunately, Naruto is preoccupied at the moment. As a matter of fact, I would strongly advise against interrupting him. Kurama's red eyes gained a solemn look. He needs to face his old fears and heal old wounds. Pailo scratched his long beard absently. Would this ordeal be about those strangers from the east I've heard about? It's not a classified information. Kurama shrugged. Considering that this group was comprised of people that were once close to him, it is not surprising that Naruto has a hard time dealing with it. Not to mention that lately more and more nobles are putting a pressure on him about a topic that's fairly embarrassing for him. The fox in human skin chuckled loudly. Hard to believe practically every teacher this kid had was a pervert, yet he flushes like a ripe apple when asked about potential heirs to the throne. Ah yes. One of the old traditions and customs popular among the nobles were harems and concubines, the old master mused. Our emperor does have a rather strong opinion against those kind of practices, doesn't he? That is actually one of the issues I wanted to address during our meeting. Is that so? Kurama inquired. The court is getting rather restless with the lack of potential candidates for the title of Empress Consort. Despite Naruto's young age, they all feel that an heir should appear to guarantee that his rising dynasty won't end with him, especially after hearing all those rumors about unrest in the eastern countries. Pailo pinched the bridge of his nose to shake the oncoming headache away. Some nobles are hoping that our young ruler will take their daughters, sisters, even their own concubines as lovers to gain more privileges. Ah, I remember their last attempt, Kurama replied, an amused grin playing on his lips. The leader of the merchant guild, Hashachiro Sora, sent his youngest daughter to seduce Naruto. You should have seen his face when a 10-year-old girl tried to make advances on him. Hilarious, the ancient demon laughed along with the old master, who just chuckled at the image of this particular scene. Thankfully, after being chewed out by Naruto, the moron learned his lesson and never approached him again, which can't be said about others, though they did make an age requirement, 14 being the youngest since that incident. That still doesn't change the fact that the empire needs an heir to the throne. If the situation in the east becomes more serious, some may see it as a pretext to take the throne to themselves. A stabilizing factor of continued dynasty may be what could prevent some more ambitious nobles from seizing the opportunity. Kurama let the words of the old man sink into his mind, already assessing their value for the future of the empire and Naruto's happiness. He knew how all those girls and women sent by various nobles annoyed the young ruler, as none of them saw him, only his position and power. After spending over a decade inside Naruto's body, Kurama liked to pride himself in knowing what his former host truly desired, and he never saw a single one of those things in those dolls sent to the court by their families. Then the demon's thoughts drifted towards the Hyuga Kunoichi from Konoha, who currently was dining with the most powerful man in the West, being none the wiser to this fact. I think we have nothing to worry in this department, Pailo Dono, Kurama said with a knowing smirk on his lips. Our dear emperor right now is on a date, so to speak, with one of the eastern captives. You have probably seen her during the hearing, the woman with long, midnight blue hair, fair skin and unique eyes. Ah yes, I do remember her. Quite a beauty, if I can say so myself, Pailo commented. Who is she, if I may be so bold to ask? An heiress to one of the most prominent, if very arrogant, ninja clans, Hyuga Hinata. The Hyuga clan has a very special bloodline, called the Byakugan, which reveals itself through their eyes and grants them an ability to see the chakra network. The girl doesn't agree with the many things her family is doing, one of which is the separation of the main and branch families of the clan, the latter of which is basically enslaved by their own kin, with a seal that guarantees a great pain and even death as a punishment. Kurama snorted at the memory of the pompous wide-eyed shinobi. They even have the gall to call it protection of their bloodline, tch. But barbarism. Pilo commented, outraged and disgusted that such practices were in use. To do something to your own flesh and blood. Thankfully, the girl doesn't share the views of her kin. Her older cousin is in the branch house, though he's practically her half-brother, since their fathers were identical twins. Because of the fraction and hostility held between the houses, her cousin tried to even kill her in the event called the Chunin exams. Yes, I have heard about those exams. They basically are to choose future commanders for the village's military units, is that correct? That's right. During one part of the exam, which were one-on-one duels, Hinata-san had to face her older cousin, who was widely acknowledged as a genius of their clan's fighting style. He tried to tear her down mentally and emotionally, which he almost succeeded in doing had it not been for Naruto. Despite all her worries, a few words of encouragement from the hyperactive kid were enough to steel her resolve and stand against her kin. What happened next? Pilo asked, engrossed in the story. The fight was very one-sided, the girl clearly had no chance in winning. But never once did she give in to the taunts her cousin sent her way. Every time she fell she stood back up, not caring about her injuries, which could have been fatal. Her opponent was a hair's breadth from killing her and would have succeeded had it not been for intervention of the proctor and the Konoha Jonin in the room. Naruto even took a bit of the girl's blood and swore retaliation against the arrogant prick in the finals. Kurama grinned at the memory of the prodigy Hyuga being all beaten up by his former host. Ironic, the boy preached all about fate and how it was unchangeable, and it was fate that decided his loss against my kid. Then this young woman has power, skill, and determination. However, how can you be so sure she's the one that would be ideal candidate for our emperor? Like we already stated, Naruto is very picky when it comes down to his potential spouse. I forgot to mention that the girl was crushing on that idiot for like 5 years before his banishment, feelings which went unnoticed to him for all that time. She blushed, stuttered, and fainted around him so often that everyone around knew about her feelings for him, besides Naruto of course. Even I knew that the girl had it bad for him and I was sealed inside his gut, so that's saying something. Kurama's face relaxed a little, his flaming eyes becoming a little unfocused. I did exchange a few words with her before bringing the group to the palace. I can tell that her feelings never died down, more than likely they grew even stronger. I must say, she sounds like a marvelous person. We can only hope that Naruto Dono doesn't do anything to scare this woman away. You and me both. DRRROOWWLLLGE. Rule. Hinata didn't really know how to take the scene that played before her. The boy, now a man, that she has been crushing on for years now, was having a staring contest of all things with a creature that until a little while ago, she considered a myth. For the last 15 minutes, neither Naruto nor the dragon blinked or looked away from their opponent. Hinata was almost convinced that the two of them would go like this all night if they were left on their own. It didn't help that the sun was even lower and the night's chilly air could be felt. The young woman shivered a little, her fancy clothing provided by the emperor's servants wasn't very good at insulating the cold air from her sensitive skin. Naruto knew what was going on with his date, but he couldn't show any weakness. He was challenged, and there was no challenge he would back off from. That was his resolve until Kiryu took a deeper breath in and then puffed a precise cloud of black smoke through his nostrils and hit Naruto with it straight in the face, making the blonde break the eye contact and cough violently, all the while swearing curses that would make a drunk sailor blush. You foul cheating lizard. That was a blow below the belt. Naruto shouted. His eyes stung and were full of tears from the smoke. It also didn't help his pride that the dragon was now sporting a victorious grin on his muzzle. Imano, Naruto-kun. Could we go back inside? Hinata asked, getting the attention of both her crush and the dragon. She was shivering even more, her arms wrapped around herself in faint attempts of warming herself up in the frilly kimono. Damn, I forgot about it. Before Hinata could utter another word, Naruto was beside her and put his haori over her shoulders. This should keep you warm for the time being. Believe me, up there is much colder, especially at the end of the day. Up there? Hinata asked confounded. What was he talking about? Alright Kiryu, you've won. No crazy stunts this time around. Could you take us to Noragami? Seeing that the beast wasn't showing any signs of agreeing, Naruto sighed. Alright, I'll throw in a month's worth of wild boar meat. Kiryu seemed to think over the proposal, and it took a few minutes before the great dragon nodded and lowered himself enough for Naruto to climb up and place himself in the spot between the shoulder blades, right behind where the large bat-like wings were connected to the body. Before Hinata had any chance to react, Naruto quickly grabbed her hand and made her sit right behind him, while Kiryu took off in a matter of seconds with a powerful leap into the air. Hinata had no choice but cling to the closest thing her hands could find in their reach, which was Naruto's upper garment, but when the dragon did a sudden turn and wide loop, the young woman wrapped her arms around the blonde. Her grip was strong enough for Naruto to feel two quite big assets of the surprisingly petite Hyuga. "Thanks pal," Naruto mouthed towards the dragon, who let out something akin to chuckle, making the pair of humans feel the vibrations, and gained in speed. The three of them were heading in the direction of the setting sun. In the hidden village in the leaves, the atmosphere was very tense as the prospect of another war was getting on the nerves of everyone, shinobi and civilian alike. Tsunade did whatever she possibly could to hold everything together and not let the people panic, but it was truly a tedious and stressful task. The civilian council also didn't make things easier on her, constantly bringing up one stupid project for the Hokage to review after another. It was like those people had no idea that Konoha was at the verge of being swept into a conflict that will most likely beat all three great shinobi wars put together in terms of casualties and destruction. "I swear, if I get one more paper from those idiots of the civilian council, I'll scream." Tsunade muttered to herself with an angry frown on her youthful-looking face, her left eyebrow twitching madly from the amount of stress she was experiencing. The blonde woman was very tempted to reach into the drawer of her desk and pull out a bottle of sake, but her plans were foiled when her assistant then walked into the office with a few papers in hands. "Shizune, tell me this is not another civilian affair that needs to be resolved," Tsunade almost pleaded her longtime student. "No Tsunade-sama, this is actually the daily report about our preparations for the war with the Akatsuki." The brunette flipped a few pages. "Shikaku-san along with his son evaluated the current status of our defenses, supplies of weapons, and medical equipment. The Nara, Yamanaka, and Aburam clans are steadily producing various ingredients for our medics to use on the field, while both Akimichi and Inuzuka clans made it a priority to prepare large amounts of food and soldier pills. As for weapons, we had a rather unexpected donation of high-quality kunai and other goods, thanks to Uchiha Sasuke." "How?" Tsunade asked, interrupting her assistant. The last Uchiha showed through the recent years just how much this last fight with Naruto changed him. Sasuke was actually one of the people who supported the blonde Jinchuriki and fought vehemently against the standing order of his teammates' banishment. Apparently a merchant known as Nico Ba used her own contacts in providing the village the necessities for this war. It should be also noted that she's been a very close ally to the late Uchiha clan, therefore she's fond of Sasuke. And thank heavens for that, Tsunade thought. The backlash after Naruto had been thrown out of his own village was larger than anyone could have expected. Almost every leader of the countries the young blonde had any influence in had torn their contracts with Konoha and the Fire Country, starting with the small but prospering Wave Country and ending with the Spring, formerly Snow Country. Only a few of them still maintained any kind of relations with the Leaf Village, and the daimyo was very angry at the Hokage for the lost alliances. Now, with the fourth shinobi war brewing on the horizon, it was really difficult to prepare in such situation. Thus the insane suggestion of allying with the Sei Empire of the West came up. A few years back everyone in the elemental nations heard how the once chaotic and war-torn lands became united under one ruler and now prospered better than some could believe. Helping make this decision a reality was the fact that the last report about Naruto told of the blonde Jinchuriki heading towards the massive mountain chain that separated the elemental nations and the current empire. How this will go, Tsunade will know only when Jiraiya either sends the report or he comes back with the team sent along with him. What is the situation with the Hyuga clan? Tsunade reached down below her desk and discreetly activated a privacy seal, one constructed by her own grandmother. The death of the previous leader of the clan was still shrouded by many unanswered questions, and the blonde Hokage had a feeling that there was more to the case than it seemed. "Officially we've got a report that the whole clan is mobilizing, as per your orders Tsunade-sama, and preparing for the oncoming war," Shizune said. "There is however something strange, as there are troubles in contacting both Hyuga Neji and Hanabi at the moment. From the information received, Hanabi-san is being prepared for some kind of ritual training that's part of the tradition of the main house. What about Neji? He's a full-fledged jounin, therefore he should first answer to the village and then to his clan." According to the Hyuga messenger, Neji-san was called for supervision of training of all members participating in the war, as well as instructing some of the older children in the branch house in their future duties. Therefore he'll be unavailable for an undetermined length of time. All of this was really suspicious. First, Hyuga Hiashi dies from a severe heart attack, despite being at the peak of his physical condition. Even someone 10 years younger couldn't ask for better health than his. Next, both of his daughters and nephew are completely overlooked in the succession, and another Hyuga takes the seat as a temporary head of the clan. The one chosen to lead, Hyuga Hideyoshi, is a son of one of the clan elders, a very cunning and clever man, Hinata's senior by only 3 years, a true traditionalist and an expert of his clan's ancient laws, and also a very talented warrior, both in the clan's fighting style, as well as a prominent Byakugan user. There were too many unknown factors to properly judge the situation. Tsunade was especially worried about the Hyuga sisters. While she didn't have much of a contact with the younger Hanabi, the older sister did show signs of something very heavy hanging on her mind. Tsunade truly respected Hinata's determination and the loyalty she showed towards Naruto, never breaking under the pressure she was put under. Thus the blonde Hokage tried to get closer to the girl, show her that there were more people who also missed the banished Jinchuriki dearly. Therefore they exchanged a few stories about their favorite hyperactive ninja during their few get-together, so it's not a big surprise that Tsunade could tell that Hinata was bothered by something. The Godin was a medic ninja far too long to not notice how Hinata changed since the death of her father. At first all of her friends have written it off as grief after losing her only living parent, and at the time Tsunade would also make such assumption. But even after several months passed since that day, something still didn't leave the young Kunoichi's mind, and Tsunade could easily tell that it wasn't very pleasant. Whatever it was, Tsunade had a whole village to prepare for war right now, and could only hope that Hinata would be able to deal with her issues. For better or worse. Hanabi panted heavily, her chest heaved as she gulped large amounts of sweet cool air. Sweat poured down from her forehead, sticking a few stray strands of her dark brown hair to the skin, and her training garments were all dirty from when Hanabi made a mistake which sent her down to the ground. No matter how the young woman's body was tired, her Byakugan never failed, nor did her stance become lax despite the ache and burning of her muscles. She was focused on her opponent, who had yet to show any signs of fatigue. Lunging forward, Hanabi released a battle cry and attacked with fury of strikes, pouring every ounce of remaining chakra and determination into every move. Unfortunately, she also let her frustration interfere, and to her opponent those strikes were sloppy, easy to predict. He had no problem in avoiding most of them, while deflecting the rest. Seeing that the teenage girl was getting more exhausted, the opposing shinobi made a quick spin, got behind her and struck the girl in the back with a strong palm strike, sending her tumbling to the ground. Fortunately, the last attack didn't have any chakra in it, otherwise Hanabi would end up paralyzed at best or even dead. That's enough for today. We'll continue tomorrow once you're rested properly. A man barely in his 20s stood over the fallen Hyuga and extended his hand to help her up, which she gratefully accepted. After all, she could trust her own cousin. Hi, Niji-san, Hanabi replied tiredly and disappointed with her performance, something that the older man noticed. You did exceptionally well, Hanabi-sama. While your stamina still needs some work, your form and precision in Juukan are truly higher than any one of your peers in the clan, Niji stated to his younger cousin. I can say with confidence that you are very close to being ready for the Chunin exams this year. How Hanabi gulped a large amount of water down to calm her elaborated breath. How come you're not even winded from our spar, Niji-san? Is this some secret technique you don't want to share? Nothing as such. It's all thanks to my sensei and teammate. They both are quite eccentric when it comes to training, and while most of the time their regiments are very rigorous, they are also efficient, Niji explained, then looked up towards the sky as it slowly darkened. I think that we should go refresh ourselves and change from our current attires, Hanabi-sama. It is inappropriate to sit for supper right after an intense training. Right after you, Niji-san. As the pair walked down the corridors of the compound towards the bathing area, Hanabi's thoughts crossed over the situation she and her sister were in right now. It was no secret that the young girl had a very rocky relationship with Hinata, mostly because of their father's mistakes when raising his daughters. Thankfully, everything changed after Hinata's first Chunin exams, where she showed determination during her fight Niji, who hated the whole main house, and later during the finals, after Naruto defeated the prodigy, ultimately breaking the Hyuga boy from his fixation over the fate. That was the moment Hiashi used to show his nephew that there are still people who cared about him. Hanabi's feelings towards her sister were mixed at best. After those exams, in which the older girl almost died, Hinata trained more than her sibling had ever seen before. The few spars they had over the years showed her improvement, as Hanabi acknowledged that her older sister was stronger than her in several areas, and the same could be told about herself. Where Hinata was swifter, more graceful and flexible, like a flowing river, Hanabi's form was confident, rigid and unyielding, like a tree with very deep roots. Despite those differences, their individual fighting styles and personalities complemented each other on the field, and outside of it, the two sisters found many things that interested both of them and could enjoy doing together, like spending some lazy afternoons and tending the garden of their mother. However, the last couple of months were very hard on them. The sudden death of their father and the very surprising statement from the elders caused a large amount of friction in the main house, not to mention that the members of the branch house seemed more distant than ever before. Was it not for a certain person, one of Hiashi's daughters would be leading the clan right now. It was all too suspicious. Speak of the devil, Hideyoshi-sama, Niji called out as a man just came out of the corner, breaking Hanabi out of her deep thoughts. The young woman looked over the current leader of the clan, and despite her personal feelings, there were a few facts she couldn't deny about the man before her. His posture was tall and proud, long jet black hair braided into a simple ponytail, just like most of the Hyuga warriors like to have. Even Hanabi had to also admit that Hideyoshi could be called handsome by many women, herself included, with his high cheekbones and fair skin, but that didn't take away years of expertise in their family's fighting style. You could say that in some aspects Hideyoshi was even more talented than Niji. Both cousins bowed to him as the clan leader turned towards them. Hanabi-san. Niji, Hideyoshi greeted. He deliberately didn't use any kind of honorific to the branch member's name, as his disregard towards them was widely known. I see you've been training. That is correct. Now if you'll excuse us, we both wanted to refresh ourselves. Hanabi didn't want to spend more time in the company of this man than was necessary. Not after what he decided for her and Hinata. But of course. Hideyoshi offered a slight smile, but to the youngest Hyuga, it only made her want to puke. Let me just say that it is good that you're preparing yourself for the duel of rights. Shame your sister isn't that as conscientious. It would be most unfortunate for her to be unprepared for such important event. Hinata-sama is currently on a very important diplomatic mission from the Hokage, Niji explained calmly, though Hanabi could feel the rage that boiled inside her older cousin, despite his face and posture, keeping the calm and cool demeanor. I assure you Hideyoshi-sama that Hinata-sama will give her all during the trials, just like she did all her life for every task presented to her. I'll take your word for it, then Niji, Hideyoshi said, his lips losing the smile and face putting up again the emotionless mask the Hyuga were known of. Consequences of disappointing me could be unpleasant for you. Without another word, the clan head turned and walked down another corridor of the compound, leaving the duo alone again. I hate that guy, Hanabi stated simply. Every time he looks at me I feel like a piece of meat in front of a wolf. She shuddered at the unpleasant memory. And I really hate how he's badmouthing me-san, even though he and some of the elders eye her more than me. It's like we're some prizes in a contest without knowing it. You shouldn't talk about this, Hanabi-sama, Niji reprimanded his cousin, despite agreeing with many of her arguments on the inside. There is no knowing who may be listening. Now come, we have to refresh ourselves and change the clothes. As the pair walked away, they were unaware of the meeting that took place a few rooms away from their previous location. There, sitting in a circle, were 5 of the eldest members of the Hyuga clan, all of which wanted to bring back the glory of the clan, back from the days when there were no villages, just clans and their own politics. Hideyoshi was sitting as the 6th person for this secret meeting. Giving a sign to one of the elders, Hitsumo, who was also a seal master in the clan, made a few hand signs and activated a very proficient privacy barrier on the room. Nodding back to the current leader of the clan, the meeting could officially begin. Honorable elders, it seems our plans have been met with an obstacle, Hideyoshi said to the gathered men and women. Hinata-sama is currently out of the village on a diplomatic mission. It is unclear when she'll be back. That shouldn't matter, one of the elders, Takeshi, commented. If she's not back for the duel of rights then Hanabi-sama wins it by default. It's just that simple. It is not that simple. An elder woman, Hanner, raised her voice in objection. The duel is a sacred tradition of our clan, not a simple match in Chunin exams. Hinata-sama, despite her weaknesses, has become very popular with the branch house members, and if we try to exclude her from the fight, there could be an unrest no one would be able to quench. The branch house doesn't matter. They'll just have to accept our decision, just like it always has been, Hitsumo said with confidence. Then he turned to youngest person in the room. What are your own thoughts, Hideyoshi-sama? I do agree that the branch house has nothing to say in our decisions, however we should avoid any unnecessary conflicts within the clan when war is so close. The clan head's lips curved ever so slightly as he spoke on. We should wait for Hinata-sama to come back from her mission and declare the duel of rights no later than a day afterwards. This way there won't be any doubts in our decisions, moreover there shouldn't be any opposition as to when Hanabi-sama defeats her sister. How can we be so sure of the outcome? Another elder woman in the room, Keiko, looked over her peers and then focused her gaze on the young clan leader. All of you may ignore it, but Hinata-sama isn't the same person she was as a genin. While still showing her weak heart, I noticed how her skills became more refined and her drive is just as strong. Hanabi-sama may have proved time and time again her superiority over her sister, this time however it may prove a fatal mistake to underestimate Hinata-sama's abilities. Keiko then shook her head. Should Hinata-sama win, there is no telling how many changes she'll make, how far our sacred traditions will fall. With Hanabi-sama as the winner, we could have at least some control over her actions. That won't be an issue. Hinata-sama simply cannot win this fight. What do you mean by that? Hanner asked the youngest man. We all know that the winner of the duel of rights inherits all privileges that normally would be shared between them and their siblings. For this reason we proposed such solution to Hiashi-sama's daughters after his unfortunate demise. I have discovered that there is also another penalty for the defeated, one different to just losing all rights, Hideyoshi said cryptically, gaining attention of all gathered elders. He turned to the seal master of the clan. How is the project going? I don't know how. Hitsumo paused for a moment and then understood everything. The whole concept made him satisfied. Yes, it goes well. The notes you sent me made it quite easy to prepare the first part of the seal. Care to explain what the two of you are talking about? Takeshi asked impatiently. The penalty for defeat in the duel of rights is complete submission to the clan. Through a seal more powerful than the caged bird seal, the reigning clan head and those chosen by him have complete control over the branded person's body while still allowing their personality to exist. There is no pain as punishment, but the restrictions put into the seal's matrix make it completely impossible for that person to rebel, and they have to obey every command, Hideyoshi said with an almost malicious smirk. Let's be honest here, despite her obvious weaknesses and past failures, Hinata-sama blossomed into a fine-looking woman and is a direct heir of the late Hiashi-sama's strong blood. I am sure that many of our more esteemed members of the main house would like to pass their own bloods to the next generations with someone like her. Also, the clan gains quite an asset to assure that any dignitaries we may want to partner with for future interests will be satisfied with services she may provide. The leader of the clan stopped hiding how alluring the concept was to him. Hinata-sama's love for her sister is known all too well, she'll gladly sacrifice her own freedom for Hanabi-sama. I took the liberty of informing her about the consequences of this duel, therefore the desirable outcome is more than certain. The elders around thought about Hideyoshi's words, contemplating the benefits that would befall the clan as a whole. Slowly, everyone became more convinced that such a plan was a necessity to ensure that the traditions and prestige of the Hyuga were preserved. They all nodded their approval, even the two elder women, all for the good of the clan. Therefore we all agree. After her victory in the duel of rights, Hanabi-sama will become the next matriarch of our clan through marriage with me, the current head, while Hinata-sama will assume the role of an asset for the clan's use to further ensure the continued prestige of the Hyuga, Hideyoshi declared. One after one, the elders and the clan leader left the room for the night. None of them even suspected a small insect that was in the chamber all the time and listened to everything that was said. After the last human walked out, the insect flew from its hiding place outside, through a very small hole in the wall, into the night. Through the darkness and shadows the little bug was flying straight to its colony, which appeared to be just around the corner from the humongous compound. There stood a hooded man, who brought his right hand up, on which the insect landed. Good work. Now tell me everything. Chapter 5. The Nada shivered from the rush of cold air, the haori wrapped around her frame provided little comfort. It was not surprising that the temperature suddenly dropped when Kiryu ascended again, but did the dragon really needed to do that so often? Not to mention that her silky robes, that were rented to her in the emperor's palace, were not created for such environment of high altitude and increasing cold, but warm chambers and elegant company. Though she couldn't actually complain at the last part, since through the entire wait in origami, as their destination was called, Hinata was practically glued to Naruto's backside, taking in comforts of his presence, warmth of his body, and the fact that she still had feelings for him, despite all this time they were apart. Not to mention that the mere fact she was riding, or rather flying, a dragon of all things, with the man that she gave her heart to, was simply magical, like a scene taken from a fairy tale. Similar thing could be said about Naruto, though for different reasons. Flying with Kiryu was a rare, but also one of his favorite pastimes, especially after a very stressful day of work as the emperor. Tonight, however, the sensation was enhanced by the presence of the beautiful young woman that clung to his back with a strong grip in fear of falling out of the saddle. For now, ignoring this nagging discovery of how much the girl has developed from the feeling her generous chest pressing into his back, Naruto's thoughts wandered on the situation at hand. What did he actually wanted to accomplish? Ever since he found that letter on the day of his banishment, Naruto couldn't stop himself from reading it over and over again and think about this shy, weird but kind girl that encouraged him before fighting her cousin, the hailed genius of the famous clan. Now here she was, 7 years since they last saw each other, riding a mythical creature in the last rays of setting sun. Honestly, this would be very romantic if not for a fact that Naruto didn't really know what true love is. Were his feelings towards Hinata genuine just from that one heartfelt letter, a mere crush, or maybe just a physical attraction from seeing how beautiful she's now? Hopefully, this week will answer some of those questions, Naruto thought solemnly. He didn't want to worry Hinata, so he did his best to hide those feelings. Naruto-kun, what is that? Hinata shouted through the whipping winds, extending one arm and pointing at a large castle, though it was nothing she has seen before. Its walls were even higher than those surrounding Konoha and at least several times thicker. Every couple hundred feet a watchtower was placed to keep surveillance on the surrounding lands in case of enemy attack. Inside the protective barrier of stone blocks was a clearly military settlement, judging from strategically placed barracks and other buildings, creating a maze that would make it very difficult for invaders to move around in great numbers. Then there was the second wall, creating an isolated inner circle from which the defenders could launch countermeasures on the invaders, who would be pretty much trapped in between the impressive defenses. Finally there was the stronghold, protected yet by another wall, creating the third and final line of defense, which was even more impressive than the previous two. The stronghold itself was overshadowing everything, and it was the biggest building Hinata had ever seen, easily dwarfing the Hokage monument in terms of height and size. A small town could take refuge here, and there would still be a room for a fitting number of soldiers to fight. There was one thing actually that made her wonder, why there was a large white swirl symbol on the front of the castle, so similar to what she saw on the jackets of Chunin and Jonin of Konoha. That one is the castle that houses the protectors of the area. Naruto shouted back. I'd tell you more about it, but we're almost at our goal. Look to your left. Obediently Hinata turned her head and saw a city. Because it was getting late in the evening there were a few lights already burning, but it was still too hard to see much details. It actually looked many of the larger cities in the elemental nation she saw during her various missions outside of Konoha. The most noticeable thing was a large mansion on the edge of the eastern wall that surrounded the settlement, and apparently Kiryu was going straight towards it. Once over it Hinata could see a well-crafted main building and spacious grounds around it. Separating it from the rest of the town was a high wooden wall with a gate big enough to let a fully loaded carriage inside. The main building was several stories high, its roof was that of classical triangle-shaped style, similar to those in temples and large castles in the east, though the edges weren't as sharp but more smooth. It gave the whole building a more country feeling. Hinata also observed several smaller sheds, most likely for storage, as well as a large and currently empty field on the side from the main gate, most likely a place of gatherings and training. While the back of the mansion was mostly unseen, Hinata could still see a part of the backyard where a decent-sized pond was positioned, over which a fully grown tree was bending its branches. Kiryu finally descended and landed on the empty space right before the entrance to the main building. Naruto simply jumped down out his seat on the dragon's saddle, not even waiting for the mighty beast to crouch down. He looked up at Hinata and spread his arms, giving her a devilish smile and a wink at the same time. While trusting her skills and physical fitness, Hinata found herself a little perplexed, the reason being that if she did jump down in her current outfit, it was a very high possibility that her underwear will be visible, even for a split of second, to the blonde man below her. The mere thought painted her cheeks in a beautiful cherry color. Thankfully for her, Kiryu seemed to sense what his friend/master was planning. In an attempt to ire him a little more, the dragon raised his right forepaw, creating that way a decent step for the young woman to use without having to jump down. Thank you, Kiryu, Hinata said, as she climbed down from his back. She even patted the mythical beast's head gently on her way down, giving him a reason to growl contently. Seeing the annoyed expression on Naruto's face was just a bonus. Naruto-sama. The pair turned their heads towards the source of the voice they just heard. A young woman, most likely in middle of her 20s, was approaching them, along with several other people. She had long dark hair that was reaching all the way down her back. The kimono she was wearing was good quality, sporting fashionable shades of yellow, green, violet and brown. What had caught Hinata by surprise was a pair of animal ears, most likely cats or foxes, sprouting atop of her head, and a cat-like tail that lazily moved around. Just behind her were another woman and a man, both wearing light armors of some kind. The woman had short blonde hair and fierce look in her dark red eyes, so similar to the Hyuga's former senseis. Her blue bodysuit looked similar to the ones Hinata saw back in Konoha, though this one was made from some kind of elastic material. It hugged her figure nicely, leaving little to imagination. Pieces of armor were placed in strategic places, protecting her vital points like her chest, thighs, and upper arms. On the belt around her waist hung a simple but also a very long dagger. The man on the other hand, was tall and well built, his face showed confidence, and his dark eyes sharply assessed the surroundings, a trait of someone who saw many battles. His armor looked much more like a warrior's than the one his companion was wearing, similar to those Hinata sometimes saw daimyo's guards wearing, not to mention the samurai from the land of iron. It consisted of bright red breastplate, a shoulder guard over his right arm, along with a pair of sleeve armors, while his legs were protected by thigh guards and greaves. The robe this man was wearing underneath was white and very high quality, from what Hinata could observe. In his hands was a long spear with a tri-bladed head, a little similar to the special kunai the late Yondaime has used, only bigger. Ocarina-sai, welcome back, Naruto-sama, the leading young woman said, as she approached the two newcomers and the dragon. Her two companions stood just a few feet behind her, like bodyguards. Hey, Kaoru-san. Naruto called out happily. For unknown reason Hinata found herself feeling a pang of jealousy. Kaoru was a very attractive woman, and the way Naruto has greeted her showed familiarity, maybe even friendship. Hope everything is ready, right? Hi. The guest bedroom is fully prepared, though I would like it if you warned us a little earlier than mere 2 hours before your arrival, Naruto-sama. Through Kurama-sama's communication channels nonetheless, Kaoru complained, looking a little annoyed at such sudden visit from her lord. Her two companions were trying to hide their smirks of amusements and failing miserably. Sorry for that, it was a spur-of-the-moment kind of thing, Naruto apologized. Next he took Hinata's hand and brought her before the three people. This is my guest for the remaining of the week, Hyuga Hinata. Nice to meet you, Hyuga-sama. Kaoru welcomed the Hyuga woman with a deep bow, making the young Kunoichi a little uncomfortable, reminding her of how the branch members of her clan behaved around her because of her status as the heiress. My name is Mitsaya Kaoru, and I'm the caretaker of this residence during Naruto-sama's absence. Heh, Naruto-sama sure knows how to pick them, the warrior man commented quietly to himself while giving Hinata a quick look over. He straightened up and gave a salute by hitting his right hand to his chest, where the heart was, while holding his spear up tightly in his left hand. Mitsurugi Kentaro, captain of the local guard. May I dare to say that you're one of the fairest maidens my eyes had the please oh. Don't let that middle-aged playboy over here catch you with his honey-layered words, Hinata-san, the last of the three newcomers, the short-haired blonde woman, have said, while her outstretched hand was still on the Kentaru's head in a chopping gesture. He's a shameless flirt that hits on almost every new girl he lays his impure eyes on. Oh, come on Anju, don't be such a downer, the proclaimed guard captain whined. His protest apparently went completely ignored, judging by the next hit his head have received right afterwards. Urashima Mitsurugi Anju, second in command of the town's guard, another hit to Kentaru's head has been delivered. And this idiot's younger sister. Enough of the rough treatment already. The battered captain shouted, finally releasing himself from the vice grip of his sibling. Why are you always so serious, Anju? If you worked on your personality more then maybe your husband wouldn't have ran away from you. Complete silence have fallen over the gathered, the few guards that were standing nearby suddenly stiffened and straightened themselves. Kaoru took a few large steps away from her companions and much closer to Naruto's other side. The young man himself just shook his head, knowing what will happen next. He's screwed, was the only answer Hinata got from the blonde man beside her, and it was just a whisper. The Hyuga woman never expected what happened barely fraction of second later. In that short amount of time the captain of this town's guards has been grabbed by his younger and a head shorter sister by ear. The pair quickly disappeared behind a corner of a building, the bigger man basically dragged on the ground, his loud protests completely ignored. A painfully sounding thud echoed and Hinata could swear that she heard joints popping over the screams that came over the whole courtyard. Ag. I give ye. The large man's voice cried out from the corner before his battered form crashed from behind the building's corner while Anju graciously walked out right after him, dusting her hands in a satisfied manner. She returned before Naruto and the two women beside him. Naruto-sama, Kaoru-san, Hinata-san, please forgive me for this outburst, Anju apologized, bowing deeply before the three. If you'll excuse me, I still need to make rounds around the town. That's fine, Anju. Naruto replied with a grin. Do whatever you need, we'll be fine. Thank you, Naruto-sama. Anju then turned to her still-down brother. You're coming with me. Without even an ounce of sympathy, she grabbed the back of his shirt and started dragging him away, ignoring all protests and choking sounds. That girl, Kaoru sighed, shaking her head, while the faint screams of the captain of the guard were still heard from distance. Truly, the day when Takeru-san comes back will be the one when I stop worrying about her. Is that the name of Anju-san's husband? Hinata asked curiously. Yeah, Naruto answered. And don't listen to that idiot. Takeru didn't run away from Anju because of her temper, but was sent on an official expedition to the northern region. I heard that they've made major progress last month, so it's a matter of time when he's back. Naruto took Hinata's hand, again causing the young woman to develop a noticeable shade of pink on her cheeks. Anyway, we should settle you in your new room. The flight was quite long and that was your first time, so you're probably tired. Hinata only nodded, trying to stifle a yawn that threatened to come out of her mouth. Truthfully, the last couple of days were very stressing and tiring for the Hyuga, and right now she desired nothing more than a warm bed to sleep a whole night. Strangely enough however, the feeling of warmth coming from Naruto's hand through her skin actually made her a little more energized, not to mention that the contact also triggered something in her mind, which now started to make strange combinations of words like bed, Naruto, night, see. Oh no, Hyuga-sama. Is everything alright? Kaoru asked the pale-eyed woman. Why do you ask? Hinata's nervousness caused her to stutter, just like she did all those years ago, making her secretly curse that annoying habit of hers. You stuttered just now, for one thing, Naruto replied with his mischievous grin in place. Just like when we were kids, you still blush and stutter. It's still cute. Hinata couldn't help, and if it was even possible, her blush intensified deeply, the normally porcelain white cheeks were now cherry red. Kaoru just shook her head at the antics of her master, while being slightly amused by the foreign woman's reactions. The three of them finally walked inside the main building, which surprised Hinata at how humble it was. It was very much like her clan's compound, focused more on practicality than useless trinkets. They walked through a few corridors until the group reached their destination. "This will be your room, Hyuga-sama," Kaoru said while pointing at the door. Once open, Hinata peered inside. The room wasn't anything that special, but it was above average, with nice cream walls and solid wooden furniture. Her attention was focused especially on the nice-looking bed, big and definitely soft enough for her to sleep soundly. It was big enough for two people, a thought that warmed her cheeks again when she stole a glance at her blonde companion. Kaoru kept a close eye on the foreign woman. She was suspicious of the Hyuga's intentions towards her young master, after all she was responsible for Naruto's safety inside the mansion. However, much to her genuine amusement, the pearl-eyed female showed all book examples of infatuation, maybe even love, for the blonde man. Every so often Kaoru had caught Hinata on stealing glances at Naruto, the pink dust on normally pale cheeks, also a clear sign that confirmed her assumptions. A cute yet impish gleam sparked in her eyes. "Hyuga-sama, you must be exhausted after traveling in such unconventional way." Kaoru casted a meaningful stare at Naruto, who suddenly found a certain part of the wooden wall very interesting, coincidentally placed where he wouldn't face either woman. "Would you like for me to show you our baths? It would easily warm you up." Hinata only now realized that she was still wearing the thin dress from her supposed dinner with the emperor. Along with that thought a shiver has ran up her spine. Yes, a warm bath really did sound tempting. "I would really like that, thank you," Hinata replied with a smile. "Then we should go right now. Maybe we could get Anju-san to have a bath with us," Kaoru pondered. "It's always better to have a bigger company for girls' time." "And that's my cue to exit," Naruto exclaimed, getting the attention of the two women. "I still have several things to do here before calling for the night. Hinata, I'll leave you with Kaoru, she will get you settled and comfortable." He came up to the Hyuga and hugged her tightly. "I'll say it one more time, it's great to see you again." "Thank you, Naruto-kun. You too." Hinata was smiling brightly. The blonde man always knew how to cheer her up. "I'll see you tomorrow morning, alright?" Naruto asked, getting a nod in response. "Both of you have a good night." "Good night, Naruto-sama." Kaoru bowed deeply after her retreating lord. Then she turned to the Hyuga woman and politely pointed the direction of the baths. "This way, Hyuga-sama." "Please Kaoru-san, could you call me by my first name, without honorific?" Hinata asked almost pleadingly. "I appreciate your manners, but I'd be grateful if you treated me as someone equal, a friend." The other woman looked surprised by such request, but Hinata was being honest. Despite her status as the heiress of the clan, even though now it's actually more paper title than anything, she never liked being put on a pedestal. Since her early childhood, even though many questioned her ability to lead in the future, Hinata had servants of the branch house bowing to her, but she could see and feel their hate, pain, and grief over being enslaved by their own family. It only made the matter more insufferable for them to be under someone so much weaker than them. That's why Hinata wanted those of common background to see her as a person equal to them, not a royalty like the elders of her clan like to think they are. "If you so wish for, Hinata-san," Kaoru replied with a small smile. "I'll be honored to be friends with someone Naruto-sama holds close to his heart. Gods only know that he needs such people." The last comment made the lavender-eyed girl frown a bit, not knowing what to make of it. "Shall we proceed to the baths?" That was all the invitation Hinata needed. The two young women arrived to an enormous bath area, where everything looked like in those high-class inns that the Hyuga heiress had several occasions of visiting. Not wasting much time, they shed their clothes and left them in baskets for the servants to take and wash them, then clad in only bathing towels, they walked into an open-air onsen. Surrounded by a bamboo fence, with several beautifully cut trees growing here and there, the whole scenery was enough to make Hinata awe-added. Once she got over her first shock, the kunoichi finally stepped into the hot water. It had a very immediate effect, warming up the girl's body and relaxing her muscles. Hinata let out an appreciative sigh. "I see you enjoy yourself, Hinata-san," Kaoru said while scooping closer to her lord's guest. Hinata took a glance over the other woman's body, completely bare except for a towel that was resting on her right thigh. The demi-human woman was very beautiful, with her long and slender legs, slim waist, wide hips and decently big firm breasts. As Hinata observed her hostess for a moment longer, the two of them were actually similar in body build, she concluded. "Hi, the water is very relaxing." "Thank you, Kaoru-san," Hinata replied with a genuine smile. This bath truly worked miracles over her tired body, she could feel all the tension in her muscles melting away. There was also this pleasant fragrance of flowers in the air, which only helped easing the exhausted kunoichi's mind from all the troubles that haunted her. "Kaoru-san." If you don't mind me asking, how did you and Naruto-kun met? Hinata asked, genuinely curious. That is quite a long and personal story, however I see no problem in telling you about it, Hinata-san. Kaoru shifted her body a little and sunk herself into the warm water, sighing in content at the soothing feeling spreading through her. This feels great, the woman moaned loudly, then turned to the waiting Hyuga. Before Naruto-sama and his army liberated this region, things were very harsh for people living here, for demi-humans especially. This town was once a simple village, like many others, under the rule of the local noble family, the Nishigami family. Those were very hard times. The lord's family owned this land and all of them had demands, but no one was as eccentric as our last ruler, Nishigami Gorai. He ascended his father at quite young age, and we already got a feel of his ideas for prosperity. Our men and youngsters were being taken into his army, he especially wanted demi-humans. Why is that? Hinata asked. He hated us, or at least, he hated that our men were naturally stronger than he and normal soldiers will ever be, despite any training they could do, Kaoru explained. As for women, well, every unmarried girl from ages of 15 to 25 were to be sent to his castle for service. In reality, all those girls and women were either used by the lord or his men and then sent back, many of them pregnant or broken from the abuse, or shipped off as slaves to other regions. That's horrible. Hinata exclaimed with disgust in her voice. It was. Barely a week after I turned 20, Gorai arrived to my village, flanked with his soldiers, to collect the monthly taxes. He noticed me and demanded that I will come along with him to fulfill my duty, Kaoru spat and shivered from the unpleasant memory. Just as some soldiers were trying to restrain me, Naruto-sama appeared in the village, Kurama-sama at his side, in the half-demon form. If it wasn't for his multiple tails and predator aura, he could pass as one of our people, she giggled. The voluntary army they have gathered was right behind them, on the outskirts of our small village, looking fierce in both experience and numbers. The Catwoman submerged herself further into the warm water, while remembering that particular day. Naruto-sama made it clear that no one should be forced to do anything against their will, and he delivered the message to the Lord in a very direct manner. What did he do? The Hyuga was entranced in the tale, wanting to know more about the man she gave her heart to, and his adventures in these foreign lands. Kaoru grinned widely, almost like Naruto would when he succeeded in a grand prank. He slugged the bastard right in the face. It was so fast that none of the soldiers had time to react. The well-dressed man was writhing on the ground, screaming in pain, while holding his face in both hands. The rich clothes were ruined by dirt and horse droppings, though that didn't seem to faze the man, as the swelling that quickly formed on his face was the biggest concern at this moment. The guards were stunned, so were the villagers, so much that everyone forgot about the young Catwoman, who took the opportunity and fled into the crowds, just away from the armed men who held her just mere minutes ago. Kaoru peeked up at the two strangers that so suddenly appeared in the village. Both were wearing armors, though much different than what she had seen upon the Lord's men, as the duo had their protectors dyed in bright colors of red and orange, though in different patterns. The blonde youngster had his entire equipment in the color of sunfruit, only highlighting a few details in rusty shades, while the Redeed was wearing a set of armor that looked like it was bathed in blood. Meanwhile, Gorai finally got a grip of himself and with the help of few of his men, managed to get to his feet, staring hatefully at the two strangers. "You mongrels. Scum. I'll hang you for this." Once the noble managed to stand straight, he didn't waste in throwing death threats and cursing the ones that dared to lift a hand on his person. "How dare you to strike me? I'll have my men skin you alive. Castrate. Your entrails will be fed to my dogs. I think you've made a new friend there, Naruto." The taller of the two figures, a red-haired man in crimson armor, animal ears on top of his head, and multiple long tails swinging behind him, brought his weapon, a massive Naginata spear, up onto his shoulder, not really bothered with being surrounded by the soldiers of the now angry noble. "Hey, you're just mad that I did this before you had a chance to cleave the pig, Kurama." The blonde youngster was sporting a large grin on his face, so bright that some people thought it was sparkling. His amaranth armor glistered in the sun, same went with the ebony black scabbards of a pair of Kodachi swords that hung around on a belt, both weapons positioned on his hips, making them very easy to draw on. "DCH, nothing he wouldn't have coming," Kurama replied with a scowl. Noticing the slowly approaching soldiers of the downed lord, the fox warrior swung his weapon in a wide arc, creating a very strong gust of wind. Well, it wasn't enough to actually throw people off their balance, it was still very noticeable, enough to make the soldiers stop in their tracks. They were very reluctant in approaching the mysterious warrior again, not even threats from their superior were enough to convince them, neither was the advantage in numbers. Seeing this, Kurama prostrated himself, hitting the end of his Naginata into the ground, managing to bring a small shockwave from the impact. "Listen here, you miserable mortals." Kurama's voice bellowed loudly, some even covered their sensitive ears. "I'm Yoko Kurama, and beside me is Uzumaki Naruto. We are here to announce that Lord Sokishu's unifying army will arrive soon to this region. You will be presented with an opportunity. Will you join the ranks of the newly created country that wants everyone to live peaceful lives after the war ends, or will you stay independent from it, still ruled by that scum on the ground? There was a deafening silence after this thundering message. Many started looking between their lord and the two newcomers, their anxiousness could be felt in the air. Meanwhile, Gorai finally managed to get on his feet, his face almost purple with anger. What makes you even think I'll surrender these lands? The lord put his head higher, showing off his status in the pose. I own everything in this region, be it game, plants or even people. They are mine. I can do whatever I want with them. The fat little man either didn't notice or blatantly ignored the heated glares he was now receiving from his subjects. Soon enough, more of my soldiers will come here and I'll burn this dirty village to the ground. Men will be sent to mines, but women and children will make fine slaves in the south, though before that me and my soldiers could use some stress relief after everything ends. He glanced over the crowd, noticing a few young girls and some quite attractive older women, licking his lips in anticipation and grossing out all present, with the exception of his personal guard, before turning back to the two intruders. In about 10 minutes you two will be dead and this place will be a history. Here come my reinforcements. Everyone turned towards the nearby hills visible from the village, and indeed, there was a growing line of approaching army. Thinking the lord actually has made truth of his threats, the villagers were beginning to grow restless, their fear building up as the approach continued. Before any panic could settle however, Naruto started laughing loudly, it was like he just pulled a prank of century, and now it was showing results. His laughter was abruptly stopped by his bigger companion, Kurama, who simply hit the blonde man in the back of his head. Naruto only shot him a small glare, but in the end he sighed and calmed down. It seems I have underestimated our troops. I thought we had like an hour before they get here, Kurama commented to himself. Must be General Akihito's doing, that guy really wanted to come to this region. You surprised? His girlfriend lives in one of the villages around here. Naruto then faced the gawking Gorai. I'll make it simple for you, since it seems your thoughts are a bit scrambled. Those there on the hills are our armies marching, not your hired goons. The deal is, you surrender all your lands and assets, taking only so much as you personally can carry on your back and get away from this region within 2 days, never to return. What makes you think I'll accept such outrageous proposition? Gorai shouted, his whole face red from anger, but it didn't make any impression on Naruto or Kurama. Only that if you don't agree, I will have to capture you, bring your sorry ass before Lord Kishu, and then you'll face judgment from the very people you ruled over. Naruto took a look around the faces of the villagers, many of them glaring daggers at the fallen noble, some already reaching for the nearest tools to use them on their hated ruler. And as I can see in this village only, you won't be getting unscathed. Needless to say, Gorai had little choice in the matter, Kaoru continued her tale. He had about 10 men loyal to himself that went with him, he took about 7 full sacks of money and other riches, then they all simply left. Never heard about them since. The cat-eared girl submerged herself a bit more, looking at the ceiling deep in thoughts. Everyone is worried about Naruto-sama. Hinata blinked confused by this statement, without saying anything, hoping that her companion will continue. It didn't take long for Kaoru to open up more. He survived this horrid war fighting on the front line and commanding armies. Because he led people to battle in the first lines, the soldiers under him respected and admired him for bravery and boldness, even if some of his strategies and plans were borderline insane. Both women smiled at each other knowingly, the two of them used to the male Uzumaki's unorthodox ways of acting before thinking. However, there were also times when Naruto-sama had to make very harsh and difficult decisions. Soldiers under his command weren't always righteous, some decided to plunder and commit other atrocities, while claiming to be working for a higher cause. Kaoru sighed again. I can't even begin telling how disappointed and enraged Naruto-sama was when those deeds were brought to light. He personally executed all those found guilty, but I could see that it took a heavy toll on him. She turned to Hinata, smiling brightly. It was a very long time since I saw Naruto-sama so happy when you came here with him. I'm so glad that you are here too, Hinata-san. And I'm happy to see him again, Hinata replied with a blush on her cheeks, one not caused by the warm bath. I was afraid that he won't want to see anyone from his old home again, me included. Does he? Hinata stopped suddenly, the difficult question stuck in her throat. After taking one deep breath, she managed to calm her nerves. Does he have someone in his life? A mistress or concubine? Hinata prepared herself for the blow that she was sure will come with the other woman's answer. It surprised her when Kaoru laughed merrily. You do like him? The cat-eared woman exclaimed while her companion submerged herself deeper in the water. I had a feeling that may be the case when I first saw you two together. Don't worry Hinata-san, there is no other woman in Naruto-sama's life, much to our grief. What do you mean, Kaoru-san? In the common people's knowledge the lords of the lands always had several wives, mistresses or concubines, to ensure their lines will not end. Naruto-sama never took a woman for himself from what I saw, despite many noble ladies making advances at him. Even local girls and maids sometimes tried to flirt with him, but Naruto-sama never took a bait. It is very vexing to think that Naruto-sama may want to abstinate from leaving an heir for his tile and right to rule these lands. Kaoru then looked seriously into Hinata's eyes, startling the Hyuga little. Hinata-san. I can see how Naruto-sama is looking at you. I support you. Thank you, Kaoru-san, Hinata replied embarrassed. Her head felt light at the thought of Naruto actually wanting her, though that could be also the effect of staying in the hot bath too long. Maybe we should get out. I feel a little lightheaded and would like to rest for the night. Of course, I will walk you to your room. The two women got out of the still hot water, dried themselves and dressed up. It didn't take long before Hinata was in the room designed for her, lying on the bed in a simple white yukata provided to her as a nightwear. Her mind buzzed from all the thoughts and experiences she encountered the last few days. Surmising, she was in a foreign land, under the surveillance of the man that she once had a crush on. Not to mention that she rode a dragon of all things. However, the main question haunted her. What does Naruto really think about her now? This was the last thought as Hinata drifted into a peaceful sleep. What if Neglected Naruto has dynasty inheritance? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.